Hi, I'm Joshua Kemble. This is my live stream, episode 227. I've been a graphic designer and illustrator for over 20 years, and I've been an art director for about 7 of those years. When I'm not art directing or working on graphic design and illustration, I'm working on graphic novels, usually ones that I've written and illustrated. Graphic novels like Jacob's Apartment, as well as 2 Stories, which are my 2 current graphic novels that are out. I'll be playing trailers for those throughout the stream. And tonight I'm planning on working on my graphic novel, the Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, a historical fiction graphic novel that my sister Lavender Vroman wrote, and we're doing for Turner Publishing. And I'm going to be working on toning page 69 for that. I'll play trailers for my books. I encourage you guys, if you haven't yet, obviously, if you want to be caught up with my content and all that fun stuff, hit subscribe, hit the bell. That way you get notifications when I'm about to go live. And also support me by, picking up some of my work. If you've been watching this show for a while and been on the fence about 2 Stories or Jacob's Apartment, I encourage you to pick it up and let me know what you think. And if you've read it, I encourage you to share them with people. So with that being said, what we're going to do is work on some comics. I might try to do a little bit of something different on this stream. We'll see. But there was like a debate. Again, sometimes I'll listen to like a debate or something like that as I'm working. And I was thinking it might be interesting to do a little bit of React content where I actually play what I'm listening to while I'm working on art and comment on it as well. So we'll see. I can try that format in a bit, especially if the chat is a little slow or something like that, because it is late on a Saturday night, so who knows who will show up. Then again, this show has definitely had our own little night gang, and so who knows, maybe we'll have some interesting appearances. But anyhow, regardless, we're going to get into drawing, so let's go to our daily stream drawing section. And then if I do end up streaming some React content while I listen to potentially like a debate, I definitely enjoy kind of listening to debates and kind of critiquing them in my head. So it might be good practice to kind of like listen to it. Let me see how that would look real quick. Yeah, so if I did that, we could actually watch a little bit of the debate and still watch some of the creation of the artwork. So good to know. Okay, we'll go back to our regular thing. And if we decide to pull that up, let me know. If you guys are tuning in, let me know what you would feel about that, like some potential React content as I'm working on comics. Because again, I listen to a lot of stuff. It might be fun to kind of stream some of it so I can kind of continue to get work done on stream, but also kind of educate myself and learn a little bit about different things. So again, that's neither here nor there. We'll kind of see how that goes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start toning this page. And I think if no one's opposed, we might try this out. The downside is it doesn't seem like anybody's in chat yet, and it would be dependent on whether you guys can hear the audio or not. So maybe I'll wait for somebody to kind of show up in chat if anybody does, and then ask if they can hear the audio, and then we'll do React. But I was thinking about listening to a Christianity versus atheism debate, which is always interesting to me. Cool. Frank said, start toning my muscles. I like it. Okay, so Frank, let me know if you can hear this. This is like my little test here, because I was going to listen to an atheism versus Christianity debate and kind of possibly pause and comment on it. And again, like I don't always listen to those. It's just that was something on my queue that seemed interesting. I don't even know who these guys are who are debating on it, but it just seemed like it would be an interesting one to listen to and comment on. So let's see here. If I pull this out and then I hit play, it's got an ad, so I definitely have to get my...
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, let's do this.
I think I'll decrease the size of it so it takes up less of the screen.
1 down, 2 to go.
Okay, thank you for the fake ad within. Okay, let me know if you can hear this. Okay, you can hear it clearly. That's great. So what we'll do is I'm going to minimize this a little bit, and I'm going to put it on the side of my screen, which hopefully you guys can still see. And that way I can kind of pause it as it's going if I have any comments on it. I have no idea if this is any good. Like there's certain debaters that I will follow, but I don't know if this is a good one. Is Christianity a Deception by Stuart Knechtel and Adam Green, and I don't know either of these people, so it'll be interesting to hear if any of them have valid points. Let's skip forward a little bit. Just get into it.
A special divine role to be a light unto the nations.
We're debating whether or not Christianity is a deception.
This is Modern Day Debate. It's a channel I listen to
with
that sometimes has really
Adam's
good debate.
opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us, Adam. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. I am Adam Green. I've been making videos online at No More News since 2014, focusing on the Judeo-Christian religions and politics. I cover news, do deep research presentations, documentaries, compilations, interviews, and debates.
Full disclosure on this, I am actually like a Christian, but I quite often get really annoyed by Christians in debates because quite often they'll use kind of cheap shots or cheap points to kind of make apologetic attempts. And so it'll be interesting. And I used to be a pretty avid atheist, so it's like I'm pretty familiar with some of the better arguments for that. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Like, we'll see if the person representing my belief system, yeah. Also, Frank said Adam Green lore. That's a good point. Maybe Adam lore is Adam Green. It's a new conspiracy. All right, let's listen to more of this. And
I've been watching Modern Day Debates for many years. Very happy to be here. It's my maiden voyage. So thank you, James. And good to meet you, Stuart. The topic is Christianity a deception? The way I look at it, if Christianity is not true, which it's not, then it's false. If Christianity is false, then Christians are deceived into a falsehood. If Christians are deceived, then Christianity is a deception. The Bible is the most successful deception of all time. Half the world believes in the God of Abraham. For 2,000 years, it has dominated history more than any other thing. Jesus is the most influential character in history. Even our dating, 2023, in the quote, year of our Lord, is based on the supposed virgin birth of the Son of God, the Torah Moshiach. The Bible is the most printed book of all time, the most influential book of all time. It's the greatest story ever told, and it's the biggest con ever sold. Christianity is deception of religious conquest and theological warfare. In the Bible, Yahweh and his chosen people, his, quote, nation of priests, have a special divine role to be a light unto the nations. And the ultimate goal is to have the whole world worship the God of Israel from Zion. Yahweh is a jealous God who wants the whole world to worship and fear him. He aims to eradicate, quote, idol worship, which essentially means to conquer all other religions and cultures and have a one world religion, one world government ruled by the Torah Messiah from Zion, according to the divine plan of God, the scriptures laid out by the prophets. So Christianity is a
Wait, what? What happened there?
This is a coincidence. Does this ever happen?
Okay, I think they just lost contact.
This is rare. I think that 2 seconds, we might be back on the same stream. 2 seconds.
Okay, it looks like they lost their connection on their stream.
We'll be able to...
That was the divine hand of God shutting him down. I'm joking.
Oh, perfect. We are. Okay, wow. Okay, that's great. So we can edit this. We can fix this. So you can continue exactly where you were. And then what I'll do later is right now, this part where I'm talking and where the stream got wonky, I'll just cut it out. So right from where...
Again, what's interesting
right
is like...
before you said, oh, wait, are we frozen?
Yeah.
You can pick up right from there.
Okay.
All right.
Let's hear the rest of the...
It was the norm in ancient times. The Israelites would scour the scriptures, searching for clues and mysteries about the redemption and the Messiah. They're reading the Old Testament scriptures esoterically in Pesher style, midrashic style, basically creating fan fiction, prophecy fulfilling myths that were revealed from the scriptures. The Jesus character, as portrayed in the Bible, certainly did not exist. The creators of the Christian deception were frauds in the sense.
Okay, this is a really weird one. Again, like, I'm sure they're going to dig into it, but it'll be interesting to hear. I haven't heard a lot of like very solid atheist thinkers that actually make the argument that Christ himself didn't exist. That's going to be a tough one. However, he did kind of hedge it a little bit by saying that that like as depicted in the book didn't exist. And that's a little bit of an easier argument to carry water with, but you're standing in disagreement with like most historians, like alive and in history, if you think the guy didn't actually exist. That's going to be an argument to carry a lot of water with. Now we'll see how much, like, again, I don't know who either of these guys are. So I don't know if like the apologist here is any good at what they do either. It's just going to be interesting to see it play out.
It's that the Gospels are a prophecy fulfilling literary construct. They report things that did not happen. Christianity is a fraud and deception because it's predicated on the Old Testament, which is clearly non-historical mythologies and legends. Is it more likely that the laws of nature were broken with all the purported miracles of the Bible, or that some ancient Israelites fabricated these stories? Given that we know that people lie all the time, we know religiously motivated myth-making was the norm back then, but there's no legitimate evidence of miracles or breaking of the laws of physics. The naturalistic, realistic, common sense, Occam's razor, far more likely explanation that everybody would have to admit that is that the plausibility that and the likelihood that these are myths. St. Paul, the real founder of Christianity as we know it, was Saul the Pharisee. He was well versed in the Old Testament. He knew the prophecy agenda expressed throughout the Torah that the nations would be essentially conquered by the Messiah and would worship the God of Israel. Paul quotes how Jesus would bring, quote, obedient and judgment to the Gentiles. He would, quote, rule like a rod of iron in the land of thine enemies. That's the Gentile nations. He would reign over the Gentiles and make them his footstool. The rule and purpose of the Torah Messiah was to conquer the nations, and the Jesus myth undoubtedly accomplished this through Christianity and Islam. This is the consensus view in Orthodox Judaism. They believe Christianity and Islam, the religions of Esau and Ishmael, are no accident, but fulfilling God's divine plan, fulfilling prophecy, eradicating the idol worship, and preparing the world for the Messianic age, like the top rabbi in Judaism, Maimonides, said. Paul was either self-deceived, delusional, or intentionally deceiving when he became the, quote, apostle to the Gentiles, targeting the Gentile world for conversion to Torah messianism. He wanted the God of Israel, fearing Gentiles, God-fearing, and basically following the Noahide commandments. Paul wanted the Gentiles to worship Yahweh.
This is interesting.
According to the prophecies, but not by circumcising and not by observing the mitzvahs and not by becoming Jews themselves, but being a separate religion. Because they're the holy seed of the descendants of Jacob must be kept separate from the chosen and the not chosen.
So I just want to comment here in a debate, especially the ones I've seen on modern day debate. I think that he's getting a little too into the weeds, and I don't mean this as like a negative. It'll be interesting to hear the rebuttals. There's a couple things I might jump on if I were like debating the guy. I'm not a debater though, and I'm not an apologist. But point being, like, he started fairly solid, but it seems like right now he's kind of digging into the weeds of his criticism, and it's like what you want to do in an opening statement is actually kind of like it's almost like a thesis in an essay, where it's like you want to kind of lay out your basic argument. You can get into the weeds and all the details later on, but you want to start establishing a big theme that you can then repeat throughout. I feel like right now he's kind of losing a little bit of steam by getting into the weeds on specifics. And again, like, it'll be interesting to hear the rebuttal, but like, if the person rebutting him is really succinct and makes some basic points that they're going to argue throughout the debate, but like kind of focuses more on the general crux, they might actually be in a stronger position, I think, but we'll see.
Of the 27 books in the New Testament, half of those letters are attributed to Paul, but according to scholars, only half of those are actually written by Paul. The rest are essentially forgeries. We have no originals of any of these, and they, of course, come from before the Gospels, but still decades after the supposed events. Paul never claimed to have met Jesus. He only supposedly appeared to him in visions, in Revelations, the road to Damascus, which are not in any of the epistles, only later in Acts. And so he saw Jesus in Revelations and in the scriptures. It's a very common theme throughout the New Testament that to fulfill the scriptures, or as the prophet says, it makes it almost obvious that this is what they're doing. It's making a new myth from the old myths, artificially fulfilling these prophecies. And the Gospels are expanding on Paul's epistles, which came first, expanding on a guy that never even knew Jesus. We have no extra biblical contemporary eyewitnesses documentation of Jesus. They'll throw out Josephus, they'll throw out Tacitus. None of that proves Jesus. They weren't even born when Jesus supposedly died. It's 60 to 80 years after.
So this is weird, and it'll be interesting to hear if it's rebutted. Again, like, I don't think, like, I've said this as a believer, it's like, I don't think you can factually get somebody to like having faith in anything, honestly. I think you kind of have to like mix experience, personal experience, the supernatural, all sorts of like heavier stuff, and have a deeper kind of philosophical conversation to arrive at anything remotely close to like a supernatural belief. But I do think like one mistake that people make quite often when they're talking about evidence, and this goes for like people when they're trying to argue against evolution or argue against anything, is like the idea that like we have somehow got history where everybody's got testifying of their existence by like a direct person who was within the lifetime of that person. And this is just not the case. There's a ton of historical figures that we, no historian doubts the existence of, that didn't have like their best friend, like who was alive at the same time writing about them. Like historically, having somebody writing within like 30 to like 40 years of your life about your life, for that era in time, that's like way more solid history than most things we consider just 100% sure of people who existed and things that happened. So again, I probably shouldn't like start cutting in and making an argument for them, but it'll be interesting to see how the apologist either runs with that or doesn't. So we'll see. But that was an interesting point. Also, just anytime you're in a discussion with somebody and they start saying scholars think this, it's like, well, which scholars? Like, anyhow, it'll be interesting. Again, these are just intros, so we'll see where it goes.
The supposed death of Jesus. And so there's the silence there. It's very inconvenient to have such a huge silence for the Son of God walking on earth, to have such little proof. And it's extra inconvenient is that there's also a huge silence from Paul, who wrote basically nothing about the biographical details of Jesus. Paul had disputes with the other apostles who supposedly knew Jesus. It's inexplicable that a man who never met Jesus had any authority on these contentious doctrinal issues, let alone Pauline theology was most influential, and half of the New Testament is from Paul. And suspicious that we only have all these early documents from Paul. Where are all the other apostles in their letters? Paul says, have I not also seen the Lord? That implies the idea that the other apostles were just seeing Jesus, reading him out of the scriptures as Paul did. Otherwise, he would have no authority over these disagreements that they were having. And Christians are deceived into thinking they must, think about this, deceived into thinking that they must believe in the God of Israel, the power of Hebrew prophecies, and the scapegoat blood magic atonement ritual, sacrifice and resurrection of Jesus, the Son of God, who had to die for our sins because Adam and Eve were tempted by a serpent. Believe all that, or else you go to hell for eternity. That's a deception. Christians are deceived into believing an ancient mythological superhero was born a virgin, performed countless impossible miracles, and will one day return from heaven in a blazing glory on a cloud, riding a white horse with a sword and a blood-soaked robe and a bunch of angels. All of this is clearly not true and thus a deception. given all these.
So I got to pause here and say, it sounds like he's taking kind of the Hitchens tack, which is interesting. So the only thing I will say is like Christopher Hitchens, like I still love Christopher Hitchens. I think he was one of the best debaters alive. Like I don't see a lot of people who can debate pro-atheism in such a compelling way as Hitchens. But so Hitchens would kind of go on the attack from the beginning and kind of make fun of the absurdity of the belief and stuff like that. But there's a trick that Hitchens had that I'm not seeing in this guy, Adam. And again, I don't really know him, but it's like one of the things that's compelling about Hitchens is he was also incredibly witty and hilarious. And so he would kind of start with some levity, but hit it really hard. And that would kind of get your audience on your side. I don't know how Adam's going with that, but a lot of his bullet points are very Hitchens-like outside of the specifics where he's digging into the details of the Pauline apostles and stuff like that, which is interesting too, because again, like you can debate Paul, but like again, like that's not talking about the core books documenting Christ. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where this goes, but again, who knows? I want to hear all takes on it. Yeah.
These things, it's very clear Christianity is not only false, but a fraud, a hoax, and a deception. And I'll end it there.
Thank you very much for that opening, Adam. And want to say, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. I'm your host, James, and we hope you feel welcome, no matter what walk of life you are from, atheist, Christian, you name it. We're glad that you are here. And also want to let you know, huge announcement. My dear friends, if you have not seen on the homepage here on YouTube for Modern Day Debate, we have released the debate card for our upcoming in-person debate conference on Saturday, April 22nd. The link for viewing all of these debates for the crowdfund is down in the description box. You can watch all of these live for the entire conference for just $1. So I'm going to put that link for the crowdfund. That just helps us cover conference costs, for example, the venue. And you can see these debates are going to be huge. For example, inspiring philosophy.
By the way, I do actually recommend people subscribe to Modern Day Debate, which is where this content is coming from. It's a really good, interesting channel. They have a lot of interesting debaters on there. And if you're interested, I would just say, if you're interested in kind of hearing differing viewpoints that might even challenge your own views or something like that, I think it's a really good thing. I know that Frank, who's in the chats or whatever, would agree with this, but there's like an old biblical statement of iron sharpening iron, like the idea being like getting in discussions, like exchanging differing intellectual ideas is actually like a really beneficial thing to kind of sharpen and hone like what you believe about things. So I don't know. I enjoy it. And with that being said, let's get back to it.
Mike Jones, one of the most popular apologetics or Christian apologetics channels out there today. As you can see at the bottom right of your screen, he'll be taking on Daniel Hakikachu, one of the best Muslim debaters today. It is going to be a true slobber knocker. You don't want to miss it. I will put that crowdfund link in the description box, as I said, or it's in the description box already. I'll put it in the live chat. So do check that out, as you're not going to want to miss out on this huge conference. And with that, thank you very much. Stuart, the floor is all yours for your opening as well.
All right, let's go, Stuart. What you got? Oh no!
You guys know how it is when you buy a new Mac. It's super fast at first, and then pretty soon after it starts to slow down. That's probably because you haven't been using Clean My Mac X, which will help clean, speed up, optimize, and protect your.
I need to get like YouTube Red.
Thank you, James, for another good one. Adam, appreciate the new content. Good to meet you. Just starting out, the Old Testament and the Israelites specifically, everybody makes truth claims. Every single worldview, atheists, Hindus, Buddhists, you name it. Even the pluralists who say every religion is the same, that is a truth claim and it's exclusive. If you go to the Israelites in the Old Testament, and you start out specifically in Genesis chapter 12, Genesis 15, what you have there is God coming in such a way where he makes covenants. And you brought up Paul a lot. Paul is connected beautifully to the Old Testament in his covenant type of language. And you see, for example, in Romans 12, just like with Martin Luther, it took them a long time, Paul quicker, fortunately, because of his road to Damascus experience. But still, you could see him working through his letters in terms of understanding, how are you saved by Christ? What is saving faith? And it's not based off of this law. Just read the book of Galatians over and over again. You're supposed to boast in the cross, not what you've done. Very, very alien to anybody living in the great US of A, because everybody lives in a meritocracy. Whatever you do in life, you have to do it better.
So I have to cut in here and say, I see this a lot in debates, and I understand they're talking about prepared statements, but it's going to be tough, because it seems like, especially because he's doing his second opening statement. And again, it'll be interesting when they start exchanging, but like, not a ton of what he's saying is super applicable to what Adam was saying before. And so it's going to be interesting to see him tie it in, because right now it seems like kind of like almost canned prepared stuff that's not really addressing a lot of his specific points. Again, it's just the opening statement, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. Good luck, Stuart. Keep going.
Better in order to earn. And so understanding, and this is why I think Adam missed a lot of it, understanding grace is a head and heart issue. And Paul, again, Adam brought up Paul so much, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 talks about how the cross is foolishness, absolute foolishness. I love that honesty, that he's not just dusting over things and saying, hey, this makes sense. Hello, just get it. No, he struggles with it himself. He wrestles with it. And that foolishness is getting to the point of understanding I'm saved through a type of grace, not my own works, not by this law, not the Pentateuch, not the Torah, the 10 Commandments, the 613 commandments. No, none of those. It's a radical switch and shift that you see through the details that Paul offers in his letters. And then he theologically teases that out in a beautiful kind of way. But we'll get back to that in a second. I go back to the Old Testament. Covenant language. God clearly says, I love you, Abraham. There will be blessings and curses. The curses will come if you disobey. You're going to harm yourself. So don't disobey. It's just like any good parent with a child. Don't disobey, or it's going to lead to your own demise. So there will be discipline. And yet, it's fascinating how they break this type of carcass.
So I got to pause here too. So actually not super bad. I like that he is kind of giving the fact that like initially, like Paul does make the claim that, you know, basically saying like to most people, like this is going to sound foolish, which is actually a good give at the beginning. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is he's making that parent analogy, and like the parent analogy is made in the Bible as well. But if you're trying to like have an effective debate, the one thing that's going to be tough with that parent analogy is the Hitchens rebuttal to that I think Adam's going to be pretty familiar with. We'll see if Adam goes there. But basically the rebuttal to that is kind of like the whole, well, what kind of father or what kind of parent is going to like basically like make a scenario where their kid has to die for a bunch of people? Like, is that a loving thing? And he'll go into that, I'm guessing. But we'll see where it goes. It's interesting though. And again, like I like these debates. They always sharpen my mind. I'm curious how, like, if Adam ends up picking up on that later on.
What you did during a covenant, in that covenant era, where God walks down the middle instead of Abraham. And when that occurs, God is basically saying, if I break this covenant, let me be like these carcasses. And so he's automatically showing that's a prophecy right there of what's to come with Christ being willing to go to the cross to sacrifice himself for us. Now you fast forward to chapter 15, and you got Abraham. And you got God saying, your descendants are going to be as numerous as these stars, and makes all these incredible promises to Abraham. And it's not focused just on the Jewish people. It's focused on all people. It's a light to the Gentiles, so all nations. And that gets fleshed out throughout Scripture, all the way down to, for example, Luke chapter 10, the Good Samaritan. Samaritan, a Jew, never supposed to mix. And yet, what does the Bible highlight? Highlights the Good Samaritan, not the Jew. And so when I have an atheist come at me and say, oh, it's all about just the Jews, and they're making up everything, and they're highlighted, and they're the saved people, it's No, there are endless amounts of examples. One of the best is the Good Samaritan, that everybody and their mother knows about that story. And it's about the Good Samaritan, not the good Jew. So all people groups are lifted up. They're all elevated. So starting with the Old Testament, it's fleshed out beautifully. And then we get to the New Testament. And Adam brought up many times, Jesus does not exist. He never existed. Well, you're going to be debating there with about 99.4, you decided the point, % of historical scholars at every single major.
Yep. Okay. I kind of mentioned this. So that was a weak point on Adam's part. I don't know. Again, like what this is going to come down to is how much of those Stewart can kind of cite and kind of back his evidence. But yeah, Adam making that claim was a bold reach, and that's always a tough one. Let's see here. I guess somebody named Abba, I can't understand the name, but they said Joshua and Frank, Titus, but avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, contentions, and striving. They are unprofitable and vain, but foolish and unlearned questions avoid. Yeah, well, okay. But, debate, iron sharpens iron, being prepared to give a defense for the hope that is within you. There's a clear call to apologetics within the Bible. I just think the approach is sometimes pretty off. And it'll be interesting to kind of see where that goes. But yeah, I wasn't wrong about Stuart kind of saying that. And then I love Yeshua said, I miss you, Frank. Hey, Seven.
Okay. University across the country. Now, if you go to religious scholars, oddly enough, that number is lower. Why is that? Well, you ask any scholar and academic, it's because they're selling books. Adam, if you go out right now and write a nice book talking about how Jesus is, say like Joe Rogan talks about, a nice mushroom, you will make a lot of money if you can get that kind of selling just a little bit. Okay, those are religious scholars. You talk to any historical scholar and they will say Jesus Christ in physical form existed. Some will say he's a rabbi, a philosopher. Some will say he was just a slave.
So he's not off here. It's kind of interesting. Oh, yeah. Frank said I can vouch for Abba, a.k.a. Seven. I think Seven's been in here before. I just, for some reason, didn't recognize the name. But I do know Seven from here. I don't doubt that you're in good faith. This is an interesting thing, right? To contend the existence in itself. Now, if he wants to counter with like evidence of like coming back after death or like whatever, that's going to be a whole other conversation. But that's what he should have targeted on. That's a lot stronger kind of position to kind of critique than like the existence of somebody who's pretty historically like backed up in existing. So well done, Stuart. We'll see if you can hold that up in a back and forth, or if Adam kind of brings up like one or two scholars. I don't know. We'll see.
Or a servant type. Some will say he was the Son of God, but they were all agreeing, and they all do agree still today, that he was a physical character. I mean, even you take Muslims, even you take Buddhists, everybody agrees that Jesus was a historical figure. Now, if you want to go back, I think your dating was off. Even if you go back to the external sources outside of the Bible, we got the Greek, we've got the Hellenized, we've got the Jewish sources. Thallus, for example, 52 AD, talked about how Jesus lived. He was crucified, and there was this great earthquake and darkness at the point of his crucifixion, which so many atheists say, we have no account of that. Thallus talked about that.
Okay, the earthquake darkness thing is a stretch, but okay. Okay, anyhow. I'm with Stuart, but I feel like that might have been a bit of a stretch. Okay.
Definitely not a Christian, definitely not a Christ follower, I would say. Or Tacitus, 56 AD, talked about how Jesus lived in Judea, was crucified under Pontius Pilate, had followers who were persecuted for their faith. Marabar Serpion, that was 70 AD, still all written before even the Gospel of John was written. He talked about how there was Jewish leadership that was responsible for Jesus' death. Pelagian, 80 AD. And he talked about the crucified Christ under Tiberius Caesar and how he was resurrected. Pliny the Younger, 61 AD, talked about followers and how they met regularly to worship Jesus early on, and that there's a high theology, Christology, right from the beginning, where the followers of Christ, after his resurrection, there was no legend that grew out. But even Pliny the Younger says, right from the beginning, they were worshiping Jesus as Lord. It's a pretty big deal. Suetonius, 69 AD, they were committed to believing that Jesus was God, these Christians, he said. Lucian, in 115, Greek satirist, Jesus taught about repentance, about the family of God, and how again, Jesus' teachings and who he was were immediately adopted. There was not legend that grew over time. These are hostile sources.
For you guys, out of curiosity? Like, I'll keep playing this, but I kind of was just thinking, like, I felt a little bit like working almost off stream, because I'm like, this is kind of what I do when I work. I'll like put on a debate or put on a funny video or something like that and kind of work on stuff. Every once in a while, I don't feel like talking, making my own like content. Not that I can't. It's just like I kind of felt in the mood to like listen to something while I work. And then I was realizing I can do that on stream. So anyhow, if this is interesting, I'll continue. Let me know, guys.
Celsus, obviously another hostile source. Talked about the Heavenly Father connection with Jesus. And then you get the non-biblical Jewish accounts. So we all know Josephus. Jesus lived in Palestine, he said. He worked amazing deeds. He was accused by the Jews, crucified under Pilate, and then his followers became Christians. And we would say that was in Antioch. And then the Jewish Talmud, 400 AD, Jesus practiced magic, it said, and was led astray and led Jews astray. They had disciples, Jesus had disciples who were martyred for their faith and were executed on the day before Passover. And then lastly, you get the Toledo Yeshu in 1000 AD, so this comes much later.
Frank said,
a medieval Jewish retelling of the life of Christ. And it was obviously completely anti-Christian, and yet talking about how Jesus lived clearly as a historical figure.
Yeah, I can't blame
so then you get down to Paul.
You talked a lot about Paul. That was a big error.
You got to roll with Paul in many ways. I get some of the confusion there. I'm with you.
Sorry. So Adam, if he wanted to do a really heavy hit at the beginning, he shouldn't have said the historicity of Jesus, although he did hedge it. So maybe he'll come back and bring up that hedge. But he did say the Jesus as described in the Bible. And so, but a stronger argument from Adam's standpoint that wouldn't have led to this whole like list of all the historians would have targeted more specific the historicity of the resurrection, which would then require Stewart to kind of rely heavily on the scriptures themselves and put him on the back foot. That would have been a better intro, is all I'm saying, on Adam's part. But I can't blame Stewart for jumping on him because, on that, because again, like even as he was saying it, I paused and was like, "Hey, that's going to be a problem for him later on." Okay.
But I personally believe it's a no-brainer. I mean, when he starts off, he has this radical conversion. Obviously, something hit him pretty hard. It was some form of revelation. I've known many people, Christian, non-Christian, who've had revelations of some sort. And I would say it was probably what's talked about most in the Bible, yet again, that word grace, to see him change from someone who was holding cloaks for people to stone, somebody like Stephen, to death, and many other Christians persecuting them, to all of a sudden be willing to die for his own faith and other Christians.
Sorry, weak-ass argument. I've heard that one before. And again, like I'm on Stewart's side with these things, but that's a weak sauce argument. Now, it is compelling that there were all these people who followed Christ who were willing to die for it, or like believed in him that were willing to die for it. But as Adam will probably likely point out in the next thing, that doesn't make a great argument because there's all kinds of people believing all kinds of things that are willing to die for it. You know, the guy in Waco, Texas was willing to die for his belief system. Like all these different cults and groups and stuff like that have plenty of members that are willing to die for what they believe. Does that willingness to die make truth of the belief of the person who's going to die? Obviously not. Like if that was the case, you'd have all these alternating theories in life that people are willing to die for that would alternately have to be true and prove each other false at the same time. So I'm curious if they'll get into that. I'm going to play a quick trailer, and then I'm going to get back to this panel, but I need to get some water too. So we're going to play the trailer for, let's see here, for my book. Let's play the Jacob's Apartment trailer. No, that's too long. Let's play a 2 Stories trailer, Christmas trailer. Here it is. All right, let's get back into this. This is the modern day debate, a debate of atheism versus Christianity. Stuart Knechtel is representing Christianity, and Adam Green is the atheist in it.
Faith,
and I'm listening in
because
while
he was such a
on
radical Christ follower who wanted and said, just like Jesus' brother James, who ended up getting thrown off a balcony to his death, who was high up in the Sanhedrin, they both are very similar in the sense of such a radical, quick conversion. Saul of Paul and his encounter with Christ, but then James, the physical encounter with his brother, are willing to all of a sudden die for their faith, when right before then, they were considered at the very top, the very tippy top of their career path, and how they were able to win so many people over to the Torah, and then just this radical shift. So Paul, you got to work with. Because again, Paul talks about Christ so much. I agree with you. You go to say 1 Corinthians 15 through 8. That's the oldest type of hymn. You got Philippians 2. You got another one in 1 Thessalonians. You got a lot of ancient hymns or doctrines that show a high Christology that Paul talked about. And when he says over and over again, saying 1 Corinthians 15 through 8, according to the scriptures, it's interesting how you took that in a negative route. I take that in a positive route, because he's talking about what happened at Passover, what happened with what takes up 33% of the Gospels. It's the Passion narrative. It's the final days of Christ and the death of Christ. And he's referencing, according to the scriptures, according to what was going to happen and what did happen through Christ, according to what would happen at communion.
I'm going to pause here. Adam targeting Paul specifically might not have been a miscalculation, because that is one of the harder arguments to make, even among like theologians. There's a lot of debate about Paul. Like, Paul made a lot of weird claims about the church. They're not bad claims necessarily, but they're definitely in contention. And those books are a little harder to defend. So him focusing on those rather than like the core, like first few gospels is, like, at least to put yourself on a strategic strong foot. That wasn't a bad call by Adam, because now Stuart has to defend Paul. And admittedly, like, as a believer, I'll give the fact that like Paul's conversion story is not quite as compelling as like the original followers of Christ. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it was a real conversion, but I'm just saying, like, in an official debate, that's a little bit harder to defend. And so I got to give Adam credit on that, like for just the art of debate. Like, it wasn't bad to focus on Paul. Yeah.
And so you have to wrestle with that. And then you have to wrestle again, go back to the historicity of who Jesus Christ was. So you're just going to say all of this supposedly was expected and fabricated. Well, you're going to have to wrestle then with the reliability of Jesus' historical figure, the reliability of the Gospels, whether that occurred. You're going to have to wrestle with all of these extra biblical sources that I mentioned. And you're going to have to wrestle with the entire Christian movement. And who in the world would want to be a Christian during that day and age for those first 300 years before Constantine? Nobody would. So what ultimately was the reason why so many of these Christians were dying for supposedly what they knew to be a lie or this great deception? And then your last point on, Jesus returning on the clouds and the white horse and the judgment, the bloodiest book of the Bible, at least I see it as. And was John, when he was writing it, was he a schizophrenic? Maybe. But I have a tough time with your poking at that, because obviously it's apocalyptic literature and genre.
And time.
Adam started really broad, which actually, here, I'll take this off while it's doing the ad. We don't need to show an ad I'm not getting paid for.
Got it.
So he does have him on the back foot a little bit, because he did kind of scattershot at the beginning, which is I can't blame Adam for. I will say it's a little bit tough because, like, again, he got so into the weeds with stuff. I think it's going to make it hard for them to isolate one or 2 points so that they can really deeply go into, which I think makes for a more interesting debate. I like debates that kind of start broad and get into like specific basics, like as the debate continues. But so far, it'll be interesting to see how Adam treats this. But this could just be a scattershot debate where it's like a bunch of claims, possibly Gish Gallops. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how Adam does. So far, not bad by Stewart, though. A few points. Again, I'm not a pro debater, but a few points I probably would have avoided. But in general, okay rebuttal.
We're going to jump into the open conversation, but first, I want to say this, folks. As I mentioned, we hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you're from. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, as we have many more juicy debates coming up here. For example, at the bottom right of your screen, Aaron Raw and Tom Jump are going to be debating at our upcoming conference Saturday, April 22nd, on whether or not religion does more harm than good. You don't want to miss that slobber knocker of a debate, so hit subscribe. And with that, thank you very much, Stuart and Adam. The floor is all yours.
All right.
Oh, Adam, you're on mute yet, Adam.
Sorry. So, yeah, I have some thoughts on your opening statement there. You mentioned you started to talk about the Abrahamic covenants, and I think that all of that is just absolutely absurd. The idea that God is going to come to him and say, sacrifice your son to prove your loyalty to me. And then he's going to say, chop off your foreskin. You've been deceived into worshiping a deity that wants genital mutilation of eight-day-old boys. It's ancient and barbaric. And then also you mentioned the splitting apart of the animal carcasses. So God,
I think I mentioned Hitchens' points are coming from this guy a lot, like that point about kind of the genital mutilation or whatever. That's straight from Hitchens, and it's a good point. I mean, it's kind of a weird part of the belief system, so we got to contend with that. So it'll be interesting to see the rebuttal on that. Also, you'll notice Adam just pivoted specifically to Old Testament. Let's see if he addresses any of the New Testament stuff. Sorry. Here,
God can carry the torch through to declare the covenant. I mean, doesn't this sound like Harry Potter type stuff to you? Do you really think that that's how God made a covenant with all of mankind? And one more thought on the Abraham, and then I'll let you respond. The whole idea of affirming the Abrahamic covenant, because all Christians believe that they have the new covenant. So to believe in the new covenant, you have to affirm and corroborate the old covenant. I see this as enabling Judaism as well as Islam. I see you all as codependents, kind of holding up this Abrahamic paradigm. And Abraham, you also said, it says all nations will be blessed through him. That's where Paul cites that he read the scriptures and thought, this is what we're supposed to do. All the nations are supposed to come in, meaning Esau, which represents Christianity, the firstborn son of Isaac, and then Ishmael, which represents Islam as well. So your response to that, I guess? I could keep going, but we'll just go point by point instead of trying to address all your 12 minutes.
Yeah, the first point with the foreskins, that was many civilizations were doing the same sort of thing during wartime. That was a savage ancient Near Eastern cultural practice that came with winning and losing battles. But to your first point on Abraham and Isaac, since that's where you started, Genesis chapter 22, there was nothing about that test where God was going to have Abraham kill his son Isaac for two reasons. One, because God obviously spared the life, and Abraham said to Isaac that God will provide. So Abraham was not going to lie to Isaac, was he? And then
was that a story that you would want to?
So here's a question, right? Because I've heard that point like a million times. And again, as a believer, like, why even contend with that? Why not just give them that? Why not just say, that's awfully strange? I agree. It is strange. It doesn't mean it's not true, but it is weird, right? I don't know. I think like sometimes we get so stuck in microcosms and stuff like that, especially in debates, where it's like we'll kind of put our foot down and hold our ground where we don't need to. Like, you can actually acknowledge a lot of the stuff in the Old Testament's pretty weird and doesn't make sense outside of faith. And like, it's fair to kind of give that, I think, in these discussions. I get that you want to hold ground, but again, him being like, well, it wasn't strange that God was asking him to kill his son because he wasn't actually going to kill his son. No, it's pretty strange. Like, let's be honest. Anyhow, okay, let's continue.
Tell your children.
Secondly, he said to his servants, we will be back. We will be back. And so it was a test about idolatry. And idolatry gets a poor rap in our culture today. But just to let you know, idolatry is an incredibly important word. And I love how so many secular authors are picking up on it in the sense of, if you make an idol of anything good or bad and you really worship it, you can call it a different type of word. But if that's what your whole life is comprised of really focusing on, it's going to eat you alive. And so God's whole test is just the vacuum inside of Abraham's heart in terms of, well, do you want something else in there? Or do you want me in there? And it's not this type of jealousy that you were talking about. I mean, we could deconstruct what that means in terms of what that jealous word means. But that's how you solve the Abraham and Isaac issue.
Oh, I don't think it solves an issue. Is that the...
Yeah, I was gonna sorry to kind of back Adam up on this, but that doesn't solve the issue. It's a tough one, and it's like, again, we have to, like, I think, get a little more mature as believers and just admit, like, not everything's clear cut, not everything's black and white, and there are things that are kind of weird about what we believe, like, and that's okay to kind of say, like, focus on the strengths and the reason we believe those things, not like, again, like, yeah, anyhow, we'll see. All right, let's play a little more. But Adam very justifiably is gonna push on that because that's a weak spot. However, you'll notice Adam very cleverly has kind of redirected the conversation to points that are a little easier to argue. Like, that's an easier one to argue. I wonder if he ever handles the existence of Christ one.
The type of story that you would want to teach to children, that we're supposed to have such mindless devotion to this voice in the sky that you're willing to sacrifice your own children. I get that it's allegorical. I agree with that. And that's the point I'm trying to say. Do you think that literally happened just like that?
If my child goes outside and all of a sudden looks up to the heavens and starts saying that he's hearing voices, no, I'm going to take him to a psychiatrist before I take him to...
As anybody should. And to dismiss the depravity of circumcision, genital mutilation of babies that can't consent to such a non-medical procedure that is tremendously painful and not even anatomically correct, and say, well, other people were doing it to the people they conquered, they're slaves or something. That doesn't make it any better. That just shows to me that the Hebrews just adopted this like they adopted everything else, their Canaanite god and stuff from the Egyptians and the Sumerians and all these older stories. That's just another thing that they incorporated as their own. And it's awful. I hate that because you believe in the Bible, you've become an apologist for genital mutilation and a God that commands people to stone blasphemers, as well as hit your slave and it's okay, and slaughter, ethnic cleanse your neighbors, and take the virgin girls for yourselves.
So you notice that he started out saying he was going to like isolate on one point so they can kind of go 1 point by 1 point, but he's getting so worked up that he's decided to kind of gish gallop like 50 points at the end there, which again, like rhetorically can be effective, but it is a bit of like a kind of unfair position he's putting Stuart in, because now Stuart has to rebut like the 10 things he just brought up. Why not? Like, again, pick one. Like, okay, focus on circumcision or focus on, Abraham. But again, I also get it because it's a broad conversation where they're going to have a back and forth, and there are a lot of points that are really hard to debate with. So he's trying to kind of tackle them all in one blow. But again, do what you said before and kind of take it one step at a time.
Exodus 21:6 and all of the reasons why the great abolitionists ended up saying we're going to be the prohibitionists, and slavery was not done in British Parliament as well as in the U.S. And that's why a runaway slave by the name of Frederick Douglass, who became a pretty big deal, who was African American, said if we don't go back to the Bible and actually interpret correctly, there's going to be nothing foundational to actually going out and fighting for the oppressed, for the slave, for the black in this specific case scenario. There's no moral foundation for it, he said. And then it leads to the miracle of the black church. I mean, what longer standing, healthier church in the history of the world has been stronger than the black church, the miracle of the black church? And that came directly out of what Christians did, black and white, with prohibition.
No, they used the Bible for years to justify
absolutely
the slave trade.
Absolutely.
And because apparently they couldn't put it in the 10 Commandments, they couldn't get that in there. They had to kvetch about idol worship and blasphemy and these things. But next you moved on to the history.
So okay, Adam is trying to like sneak in some disses there, and again, like just stay point by point, man. But it's rhetorically effective sometimes, but still, keep in good faith, man. You're not doing bad. You didn't have to resort to that. All right. Let's see it continue.
Historicity of Jesus. And have you read like Richard Carrier's Historicity of Jesus?
Wait, I thought I'm supposed to be challenging. Let's go question for question here since you started.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. He was starting to give.
I mean, that's a good. We'll go back to that.
No, that's cool.
So you
turns asking the questions. Go ahead.
You said the Gentiles. Clearly, Paul talked about the Gentiles, that there was supposed to be a separate religion, and that he battled with the disciples over that. Are the Gentiles included?
No. He thought it was a continuation of basically the same Judaism, but that the Gentiles could be grafted into. But it essentially did become sort of a different sect in Judaism. The point I was making is that he didn't want the Gentiles to be circumcised. He didn't want them to become Jews. The problem was they needed the nations to worship Yahweh without becoming Jews. So how did they solve that? How did they accomplish that goal? With Christianity and Islam, which they consider Islam Noahide compliant. They consider Christianity, like I said, preparing the world for the Messianic age. It's part of their plan for the one world religion, the Abraham Accords, the end times prophecies to be fulfilled. Everybody playing their roles in the Armageddon script.
Well, Paul did not want everybody to get circumcised. He was not pushing for this Judeo-Christian way. No, he dope slapped Peter in Galatians chapter 2, and he wanted a universal understanding of faith in Christ. Right? We agree on that? Because maybe I missed it, but I could have sworn I heard you say that there was tremendous discrepancy between the disciples and Paul's messaging on that very issue.
Mm-hmm. On several issues like that, yeah.
He had to correct Peter, and Peter got in line really quickly if you read Galatians chapter 2.
Yeah. Amazing that Jesus couldn't clearly let that rule.
Okay, like you gotta let him talk, man. And I don't feel like Adam's actually the weaker of the two. I feel like Stuart's been doing okay. Adam's been doing okay, but I feel like Adam loses his ground a little bit by kind of interjecting, like with kind of cheap pot shots like throughout. And again, like you don't have to do that. You've got some strong points, like let it go back and forth. But I understand it's like there are some pot shots. Like again, I don't know, if I were to debate, I might take more of a tack like Adam, where I'd take like cheap shots here and there, but you don't have to. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna put on a trailer, and then we'll watch the rest of this while I color, shade this panel. So I have to shade this panel, and then I'll probably play a quick round of Risk after that on stream. So we'll be right back. Here is Jim Lujan, who has a show coming up tomorrow on his channel. That's going to be a live stream. But anyhow, here's his ad for Jacob's Apartment in 2 Stories.
Well, Peter, since I'm such a big music fan, I'm going to have to go with Karen Carpenter. Oh, Stu, I'm sorry. That's the incorrect answer. Trish, what you got for us?
I'm going to go with Kim Gordon.
All right, let's check that answer. Kim Gordon. Do we have a Kim Gordon? Yes, and that means you're our new Wordzoid champion, Trish. Dale, tell Trish what she's won. Trish, you've won a copy of 2 Stories, a memoir of faith and mental illness. Handwritten, hand-drawn, and handed to you by artist and writer Joshua Kemble. But wait, that's not all. You've also won a copy of Jacob's Apartment, the story of a doomed romance. What happens when you take Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and put it in a blender with Ghost World? You get Jacob's Apartment, written and illustrated by Joshua Kemble. Trish, thank you for playing Wordzoid.
All right, great job, Trish.
I was told I was going to get a lifetime supply of paper towels.
I still love the ending that Jim threw in there. Okay, cool. So it seems like Adam's definitely being more proactive, trying to be assertive and a little more hostile. I don't want to make the mistake that a lot of people make where they're like, there's all these angry atheists. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of Christians who use the same tactic during a debate. But, and again, it can be rhetorically effective. I think he's losing control a bit of it. It'll be interesting to see how Stewart kind of rebuts. If Stewart can take it back on track to the opening points, that would be a good move. I think Stewart needs to navigate back to the historicity, because again, I don't think that's something Adam can refute. And like, you want to collapse all his main points. I know he gish galloped at the beginning, so it's a little hard to collapse like 50 main points, but try to keep up to the bullet points Adam himself started with. And then Adam stay to the points that Stewart started with. I know you want to rail at everything, but stay on the tracks, man. That's all. That would be my suggestion to these guys. Again, I'm not a pro debater. I'd probably do way worse than either of them, but it's just, I love listening to this stuff. Let's continue.
Ruling be known to his disciples that actually knew him when he was supposedly on earth. It had to take a guy that never met him, that saw him in the scriptures and in visions to clear up that issue that they had.
And you know what's so funny is that if the Bible and the message was really being tampered with, why didn't Jesus supposedly just clear it up early on instead of it lasting for so long? Whoever supposedly made up these scriptures. No, they left it in there, and it's embarrassing detail that lasted so long. So I would say that's more credibility for the historicity of the Bible rather than, to your point, of somehow it's connected to fairy tale or Jesus' miscommunication.
They left it in there, but who knows what they took out. And in Acts, they did try to resolve and make it look like it was more of a unified church, when really Christianity started off with a diversity of different Christian sects and ideas.
Wait, where's your source for that? Adam, where's your source for that?
Richard Carrier's Historicity of Jesus.
What does he say?
He talks about all the different Jewish Gnostic sects and all the different types of, even Paul says there's people that worship other Christ. There's already having divisions. There's not some like handing the baton from Jesus to Peter to founding the rock of the church. That's not how it went down at all. They were having huge beefs from the onset of Christianity all the way up till 3rd century, when the Orthodox had enough power to suppress anybody that disagreed on anything.
Adam's not off. There were a lot of differing sects that kind of broke off from like after Christ's death that had different opinions of Christ. There were Gnostics. There were like all sorts of people. There was a whole group of people who thought that Christ himself was a person, but didn't have supernatural powers. There were people who, had all sorts of differing viewpoints. That's a big chunk of why Paul was kind of like trying to unify everybody in his letters. So Adam's not off on his history there. It'll be interesting to see where he's going with it, but that's like Stuart should not fight that claim. That's not a battle worth fighting.
Now, the Gnostic Gospels and the power of Gnosticism didn't come about until the mid-200s.
Well, that's the way the Christians like to date it, because otherwise it would disprove Christianity. Which, are you familiar with the Melchizedek?
Wait. Stuart was right there too. It's like this rift didn't happen like immediately. I mean, it grew, but Adam, come on, like he actually okay. Anyhow, it's an interesting back and forth at this point. I don't even know if they need to debate this part. I feel like they both agree.
How would that disprove Christianity?
Blur like magic. New Bear With Me Blur Tint Foundation. Pores blur.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Melchizedek scroll from Qumran?
A little bit. I'm more familiar with the Isaiah scroll.
Okay. It's written, Melchizedek scroll, it's written in Hebrew. It's dated to 100 BC, 100 years before the supposed birth of Christ. And it is a Pesher document. They are, Qumran, the Essenes, they're reading different scriptures like they were back then esoterically to try to figure out when's the Messiah coming? What's redemption going to look like? When are we going to be, saved from the Romans? And in this Melchizedek scroll, they connect prophecies in Isaiah 61, Isaiah 52, which is 52 and 53, the suffering servant. And he connects that to Daniel 9. These are the same verses that later Christians also look toward to create their myth of Jesus. So this proves that this is what they were doing. This proves that it's the same thing that we're seeing in the Bible, which you didn't address that at all, that all of the Jesus myth, you mentioned the Passion. The Passion can be completely derived from Old Testament scriptures. And a lot of times this is written in Greek because it was targeting the Gentile world. They're quoting Jesus's words, but it's actually quoting from the Septuagint. So why would an Aramaic speaking Jesus be them putting words into his mouth from the Septuagint, which is in Greek?
This dude needs to very much he's got to slow down a little bit. It's just like, again, like you're hitting so many points, you're putting your opponent in a position where they can't refute like one of them. It's gish galloping, and again, like that sucks. It doesn't make for as fruitful of a conversation. It definitely makes for interesting kind of like blood sports type stuff, and maybe it'll get heated and interesting. But like, if you want an exchange that's back and forth, like stick to one topic, man. You bounce to like 5 different points in this one thing. And again, Adam's not off to bring up these things, but like get in an exchange and hold one idea for a second, dude.
It just shows that it's fraudulent.
No, it's interesting theorizing, but what's the motive? What's the motive if Jesus is going to go to the cross? And why would a Jewish society, which this would be the last type of worldview and religion that they would want to pick up, why would they accept that and then 380,000 of them be willing to die in a single Roman Colosseum for their faith in the most painful kind of ways imaginable?
He's bringing back.
Well, the Roman Empire went from persecuting Christianity and Judaism until Christianity grew and spread in Rome, and then they started imposing Christianity, Torah Messianism, and the God of Israel on the whole world. That doesn't seem like it played into the scriptures, using the Roman Empire to spread the commandments and the laws of Moses and the God of Israel. So,
persecution started from the get-go. It didn't start in 300 when Constantine came to power.
I know.
Oh,
I didn't say that it did.
What was your point?
My point is that it went from persecuting Christians, which they probably saw it as a spin-off sect of Judaism that was a subversion to Rome. So I would imagine there would be some persecution. I would have, especially because Christianity is monotheistic, and you can't tolerate and get along with the pagan gods. So of course there was issues there, but that
like that all sounds fancy, and I can see a few connections. What is their motivation? Like, why would anybody in the first 300 years before Constantine ever want to become a Christian when you're losing all your friends, all your property, your kids are getting dragged off to prison, and then
there's plenty of things that are appealing,
brutally mutilated.
You obviously see the appeal in Christianity. Billions of people throughout history have all obviously seen the appeal in Christianity, especially the Roman Empire that was very barbaric and kind of going into decline and stuff. Christianity was seen as a good thing for a lot of ways. That's why it eventually, when the Roman Empire collapsed, it ended up growing and taking over. But also a lot of the suffering of the martyrs and stuff, this is coming from traditions. I don't know that this stuff legitimately actually happened. I know the Romans were brutal and did probably persecute a lot of people, but I don't.
Okay, Adam is now making a big mistake. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a long history of like people claiming to be Christians, like persecuting people. So that might have been an interesting pivot. But you can't kind of undo like what happened to early Christians like in that era, like and just being like, and honestly, was the martyrdom even real? It's like, come on, dude. It's like, again, like, read a little bit more history. I'm just saying, it's poor Adam. He's okay. It'll be interesting to see where this goes.
I don't believe all these Christian church father.
Well, you can take me as your ultimate Christian source right now, because I not too long ago was over at the Roman Colosseum listening to secular tour guides, and everybody takes that one to the bank that persecution started right after Jesus's resurrection.
Well, I mean, they were conquering Jerusalem 100 years before that with Pompey.
Right there.
But all right, so back to one of my questions then.
Oh,
okay, so
yeah. No,
wait. Jesus.
Wait.
Okay,
did you just went to three?
Keep going then.
So how, in light of just about like literally almost every single major historical scholar, ancient historical scholar throughout the U.S. believes that Jesus was a historical figure, how do you, one, not accept that? And then two, what in the world was he then?
What was Jesus then? He was a mythological character that they found from Scripture. He's a syncretic amalgamation of many different pagan concepts and motifs from the Old Testament. And I'm asking, have you read any books on the mythicist Jesus, like Richard Carrier's books, or Nailed? You need to read Richard Carrier's book, otherwise you're highly uninformed on this topic. And you're throwing out.
I will never read every page of a.
Okay, so I'm sorry, that's a bad point. I mean, don't get me wrong. Maybe there's a guy, Richard Carrier, who's like a skeptic of this, but just because there's an outlying historian, again, you shouldn't appeal to consensus, but you have to appeal to consensus if somebody's making a claim about consensus that is not consensus. And so it's like to kind of rebut and say like, hey, there's this one book by one scholar, and if you haven't read that one book, you can't argue anything about this. That's kind of a bold claim. And honestly, I don't know anything about this Stewart guy, but he doesn't seem like an unread guy. So I think he might have just set himself up there. Let's see.
A Carrier book.
Okay, you should listen to it on Audible.
I literally, on all the college campuses I speak at, and all the professors I've debated so many of the major professors across the U.S. on YouTube when I was just holed up during COVID. Not a single one of them, Columbia, Yale, not a single one of them even came close to saying that Jesus wasn't a historical figure.
I'm aware they have a mythicist. Hold on, they have a mythicist
more than Carrier.
Oh no!
Let me know that.
They have well Carrier. I've been studying him. I watch all the other top academics like Bart Ehrman and McDonald and others. I watch them all, and I think they're wrong. Bart Ehrman went to Christian schools. He's made a whole career on what the historical Jesus really was. Most of them have a minimal mythicist Jesus, where they say there's a kernel of truth. He was a rabbi and he had a small following and he was killed by the Romans, and that's about it. And all the rest they admit is fiction written from the scriptures. I got books like Gospel Fictions from Randall Helms, David Fitzgerald's Nailed and Mything in Action. They go over all of this, where the Jesus myth came from. And it is the fallacy, appeal to authority to say, oh, well, these prestigious academics, all these people, academia used to say that they used to say Moses was real. And
okay, so to be fair, you guys are both appealing to authority. You just told him, hey, if you didn't read this book, you can't talk on this topic. Like, come on. Like, anyhow, I'm just saying, if we're talking appeals to authority, yeah. Anyhow, also making a claim about somebody not existing in history when like the general consensus of almost every expert in the field is against it. It's not that you can't make that claim. It's just the onus is more on you, much like it would be on a Christian making a claim, a wild claim like talking snakes or something like that. The onus is on the person making the wild claim to prove it. And saying, hey, read this book does not make a proof. So anyhow, it's interesting.
It took a while, but now they realize that's not real.
I named 16 of the 25 Greek and Jewish non-biblical sources talking about Jesus Christ from early dates, and then I named some of these sources. My issue with you is, I think, again, conspiracy theorists, borderlining
just to be sure that there's not too much interrupting.
You're borderline conspiracy theorist right now, just in terms of percentage.
Believe in the guy walked on water, you're a conspiracy theorist.
And my whole issue is, the reason why you I don't think
wrap
you would.
It up, Stuart, and then I got to give Adam a chance to respond.
I guarantee if you debated Richard Carrier, he would own you on every point on this.
I don't think you would stick with this, and you know it's wrong, but you have to, or your entire position falls apart.
No, not at all. Not at all. There could be a kernel of an actual Yeshua that lived in first century. It could even be based on Jesus Benanias or Jesus Pantera that they.
So I was mentioning that Stuart should bring it back to the history of the city of Jesus, and it seems like he did, which is a smart move because that's probably the biggest misstep that Adam made. That's the easiest argument to kind of start pulling apart. So smart move by Stuart. Bit of a pivot, but not bad. And Adam's in a rough position because here's the thing. He's making other points that are arguable and pretty strong. And like, again, like I was saying with like the whole thing that like I see a lot in debate is people like kind of hedging where they shouldn't. Like to me, Stuart didn't need to kind of even waste time talking about heavy theological stuff regarding like why God would ask a man to like sacrifice his son. He didn't need to get into that or defend it. He could have just said, yeah, that's weird. Like it is weird. Just give him that and then kind of move on to something that's easier to debate or like the harder, more core issues, you know? Because again, it's like, even if it's weird, it doesn't disprove it. And I think in this case, Adam should give this and just be like, you know what, for the sake of it, even if he believes it, it's like knowing it's an outlying position, possibly just give it and say, hey, even if I assume he's like, I'm not agreeing with you, but just for the sake of this conversation moving forward, let's just give you that. Like Christ. So let's say Christ was a real historical figure. Prove his resurrection. That's a better pivot to kind of get it back on like a more healthy back and forth. Whereas like hedging on a point that's an outlying position, the more that's repeated, the more I don't think Adam holds ground. So it'll be interesting.
Talk about in the Talmud, but you cited the Talmud as proof of Jesus. I got the book, The Jesus the Jews Never Knew by Frank Zindler, where it goes in deep how actually the Talmud is not any good proof of Jesus. Carrier and Fitzgerald go into this. You would know this if you read their chapters on the topic. Also, Tolda Yeshu, this book from 1,000 years ago, you can't cite a book from 1,000 years ago and say that's proof for Jesus. You're throwing out a list of all these names. Thales, I'd have to see the source on that. I don't think that's credible. Josephus and Tacitus, you listed the dates that they were born, not when they actually wrote these things. These are not good proofs of Jesus. This is actually proof that there's not a historical figure. It's not a conspiracy theory to say that people came up with a mythological character. You think all the rest of the mythical gods and stories are fictional, but if you don't believe this one, and in your case, do you believe like all the miracles of Jesus, or you think those are metaphors? Multiplying bread, rose from the dead, walked on water. You think all those are literal?
Don't fall for it, Stuart. Just stick on.
Depends if you're asking me from a philosophical or a historical perspective and stance.
Historical.
No, it's a philosophical question.
Oh my gosh, that is such evasion.
No, it's not at all.
Okay,
that's always the question over miracles. It's if you allow the supernatural or not. Are you going to listen to more of the Blaise Pascal or the David Hume? Both great minds, but they both struggled over this one and said, right from the get-go, it's a supernatural question. You don't just jump to the historical. Are you going to allow the room for a supernatural to take place? Then there will be a pause of what we consider laws, when in fact these laws in many ways are broken. We obviously know the perfect law is God's law, but from a physical understanding of things, God can intervene and absolutely change the laws of nature for a moment. If God is actually here on this planet, I mean, that's not a long shot whatsoever. So that's the one you got to wrestle with. And yes,
I don't pity being a Christian apologist and having to defend the indefensible. These stories, like staff turning into a serpent, a woman into a pillar of salt. You're not a young Earth creationist, right? So you don't believe in Adam and Eve?
That doesn't mean that.
Well, so billions of Christians throughout history have been just completely wrong on that, because God can't speak. I think, honestly, I've seen your other debates with
kind of struggling
Ra and Matt Dillahunty, who are the guys that deprogrammed me from my Christian upbringing about 15 years ago.
By the way,
and I've seen
he was mentioning Matt Dillahunty. Matt is so much more effective at debate. I feel a little bad for Adam here. I feel like Matt is actually, if you ever get the chance to watch him in a debate, he's kind of a killer. And he'll take pot shots, but he's so rhetorically effective. Much credit to him as just a person that can make an argument. Adam is floundering at this point and kind of pivoting and gish galloping. I don't know how that looks rhetorically. To me, as somebody who appreciates debate, I don't think he's holding a strong stance. And I feel like if he's mentored by Matt, like watch some of Matt Dillahunty's stuff, because you're not performing as well. You're dodging.
The super chats ganging up on you in the comments, and I feel like you took a beating there, but there's this theme that, you might be leaving Christianity, you might be an atheist, you might be having doubts. I think if we go into some of these verses, it'll hit home a little stronger on how Christianity is a deception.
Notion has been the centerpiece
we have another advertisement.
It's quite literally an extension of my brain. I can take notes.
Thanks for telling me about Notion.
Can we do that?
Gaz was saying,
absolutely.
What is happening?
If we go one for one.
So Gaz, I am working on comics, and today I didn't really feel like talking a bunch. I feel like getting work done. But when I work, I'll often kind of listen to like debates or streams or something like that. And one of my favorite channels for debate is Modern Day Debate. And so I just pulled up the most recent Modern Day Debate where they're debating atheism versus Christianity, which I love listening to. I don't know what's going on with the comments. Like, Seven, you're awesome, man, but spamming like a million verses in the comments isn't gonna reach out to a lot of people. I'm just saying. I don't know. I mean, it's cool. Keep commenting. I appreciate you watching and stuff, but maybe engage at least, or like have some conversation, not just spamming different quotes. Okay, let's see here. And then Gaz was saying, I feel you on watching debates while working, though. So it's funny. I was just saying, like, I listen to these a lot. And Adam just made the comment, this guy, Adam Green, that he watches Matt Dillahunty. And I'm like, dude, learn from him, because you're not performing as well. To be fair, Stuart has made some pretty big errors and kind of held his ground in areas he shouldn't. So that's where we're at. And I'm just kind of live commenting on it while I work. So, and then once I'm done shading this fourth panel, I might do some Risk world domination. All right, here we go.
Sure.
You got the burden of proof here, don't forget.
Yeah, Gaz,
no, actually, we kind of both do. You have to prove that Christianity is true, and I have to prove that it's not true. That's really what we're doing. And I think it's not true, and it's also a deception.
All right, lay down.
Let's look at this. This is Paul, Romans 15:12. Isaiah said, "There shall be a root of Jesse," that means the Messiah, "and he that shall rise to reign over the Gentiles. In him shall the Gentiles trust." This is a citation, Paul being inspired of this Jesus character from Isaiah, one of the top books that he pulls the Jesus myth from. And it says, "In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which will stand for a ensign, a banner of the people. To it, to the Messiah, will the Gentiles seek and reign over us." So can you agree that the purpose of the Torah Messiah to Second Temple Judaism was to come and redeem God's chosen people and to basically conquer the Romans, right? Conquer the world.
What do you mean by conquer?
Like theologically conquer the world. Have all the world, every tongue confess, every knee bow.
Okay, this is a weird point. I don't know
what are you trying to get
where
at?
Adam's going. Yeah, I'm curious.
I'm asking, what is the goal of the Messiah in the Torah? What is he supposed to do?
The goal in the Old Testament?
Is it to reign over the Gentiles, like it says here for Paul? So Christians are being reigned over.
Yeah.
Like, and following the Torah Messiah like a flock of sheep.
Yep.
And none of that doesn't sound like a deception at all. Look at this. So Paul is citing this verse from Isaiah 11:10. You go to the beginning of the chapter of Isaiah 11:1-2. It says, "There shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." This concept of the rod is another biblical theme of the Messiah. The rod out of Zion will rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. So who is the enemies that Jesus is ruling over right now?
Okay, like I like this Adam guy's energy a little bit. It's kind of fun, but like again, like this is just such an awkward way to debate. Like you're literally pulling out like bullet pointed. Like I hate it when I see this from like religious people. I hate it when I see it from atheists. I feel like if you're gonna have a discussion, like have a discussion. But if you're gonna start going through a PowerPoint presentation, I feel personally, this is my own opinion, and I'd say the same thing of like anybody in a debate. Like one of my biggest pet peeves, guys, is like, oh nice. Thank you, Seven. Anyhow, so like I one of my biggest pet peeves in any debates, like some of my least favorite people, and I'm a Christian, right? But it's like some of my least favorite debaters are young Earth creationists, particularly because a lot of them use the same debate tactic where they'll railroad and like gish gallop the entire conversation, and they have like a pre-made PowerPoint presentation that they just cycle through with everyone they talk to. And it makes for these really boring debates because it's like you have kind of your talking points, you have your thing memorized, and there's no like real back and forth exchange. And I feel like, I hate to say this about Adam, like Matt Dillahunty doesn't do that, and I appreciate that about him. I feel like this Adam guy is falling prey to that, and I'm like, dude, just get back to a discussion. Like the PowerPoint stuff is boring. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, Gaz was saying, I like what Penn Jillette says, that you have to be willing to accept you may be wrong to have an honest debate. I agree with that too. But I feel like also you have to be able to engage in the debate and not just rely on like a bullet point presentation. Because right now it's a little tough. Like, again, you put anyone in this position where you're just reading, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? It's like you're constantly having to be on the back foot instead of actually having engagement with like one single topic. So I will say, while I liked Adam's beginning to this, and I thought he was actually the strongest of the two. He did gish gallop a little bit at the beginning. Now I'm starting to not think I don't think he's as rhetorically effective just because of kind of a lot of this, like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? And if you want to see a master of debate, I've mentioned this before, but I think Christopher Hitchens was probably one of the best debaters ever. And if you look at the way he approached things, he would do a little of this, but he measured it. And I rarely saw him pull out a PowerPoint presentation. Just pointing that out.
Isaiah Hebrew perspective.
He will rule over thine enemies.
Yeah. Christians are the enemies. He's ruling over the nations, which are the Christians. Right?
The enemies in the Old Testament, enemies are an incredibly diffuse term. If you look in the Psalms alone, enemies can even be your own family at times. You have to read David in the Psalms. And so when he talks about enemies there's not going to be a clear understanding of what exactly those enemies are.
It's the Christians that he's ruling over. That's who they wanted to conquer, was the nations. All right, here one more, and I'll. What?
You think the Jews wanted to conquer the Christians?
No, I think that the role of the nation of priests was to get all of the nations to worship the God of Israel and eradicate idol worship. Can you agree with that? That's the objective of the Torah. All the world worshiping the one God of Israel, right?
The objective of the Torah was to start out understanding monotheism,
the one true God of Israel,
predestination, chosen, covenant. And then the Torah and the 10 Commandments was all about, again, worshiping God and learning how to love neighbor.
You believe that they're chosen by God? They're above the nations, as it said, his treasured possession, the apple of his eye. Those that will not serve them shall perish. Like
if you read Deuteronomy 7, if you read Deuteronomy 7, Deuteronomy 4, Galatians 3, everywhere in the Bible, that's like 3 of probably 50 to 75 places that talk about how God did not choose Israel because it had any type of strength, power, beauty, wealth. In no way were they chosen for anything other than God's grace.
Yeah, this is a weird back and forth. It's not very fruitful. I
didn't say that he chose them because they were better. I said that he calls them above the nations.
On the track.
In Deuteronomy, it says that they shall reign over the nations.
Yeah.
Here's one more, and then I'll let you have the floor for a question. Share. Are we sharing right now? No, share screen. Here we go. Now, Psalms 22. Everybody can agree that Psalms 22 is a, quote, prophetic verse, but really this is just where they got the inspiration for the crucifixion narrative. Psalms 22, they pull, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? They literally, direct quote, put that into the mouth of Jesus as one of his supposed last words. Also, the reproach of men, despised of the people, all that they see me laugh to scorn. Psalms 22:16, they pierced my hands and feet, again, where they got the idea of the scourge of Jesus. And then go to Psalms 22:27-28. It says, all the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto the Lord. This is the purpose of Jesus in the context of Jesus. All the kindreds of the nations shall worship before thee, for the kingdom is the Lord's, and he is the governor among the nations. In the Orthodox Jewish Bible translation, that translates as the Goyim shall bow down in worship before thee. He is the Moshel, the governor over the nations. So this is the purpose of the Messiah, was to conquer the nations. All of the references in the New Testament, he's the footstool.
Like Adam got off track.
All relate back to the context
and he's not bringing up
verses
bad
like
topics,
this, where it's about theological conquest over the nations.
Yep. That's exactly right. If you read, you talked about Richard Bauckham. No, maybe you didn't quote Richard Bauckham. I believe the top 2 New Testament scholars, and the majority of people would agree with me, in the world right now, one's Christian, one's secular. Bart Ehrman, Richard Bauckham. Richard Bauckham put it best when it comes to this issue in terms of the conquering people groups, and talking about how every ancient Near Eastern group, you talk about the Amalekites, Canaanites, Babylonians, it was about conquering and defeating. But Israel, in and of itself, was the most exclusively inclusive way of understanding how God was going to get to all people groups. Because again, yes, exclusively, absolutely, they were going to rule and reign for a time. But then the inclusivity of all people groups being reached is yet again what makes the most sense of our human race today and how God would act if he was a good God and how we judge to be good. Because every other single religion is based off of that type of conquering, that type of ruling, and a type of you have to be good enough in order to get into heaven. But what the God of the Old Testament...
I love your comment. He said, this is like listening to people quote baseball stats. I agree. It's kind of weird. I gotta say, like, I don't think either of these guys are like heavy hitters. I didn't even know who these guys are before kind of pressing play. I just listen to modern day debates sometimes, and this was the latest one. But yeah, I have to say, neither of these dudes, okay, like, here's the thing. If you're Stuart, right, and this is something for anybody who's out there who, like, has a faith or a belief system and isn't an atheist, right? It is meaningless to an atheist to start getting into deep theology. Like, come on. You don't, like, okay, so for a Christian to kind of explain, like, the idea of the atonement, right, where it's like God sending his son to die for the sins of the world, that makes perfect sense to somebody who's in the theology of that. But to an outsider, that sounds like, yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. This guy had to send himself to die to himself so that he could be, like, he wouldn't have to have rage about the people he made turning against him. And he has control over everything. It doesn't make sense to, like, so my point is, start finding areas where you can actually discuss things that are profitable or move somewhere. And again, like, I feel like Stuart keeps getting, like, I feel like Adam is gish galloping and pulling up like PowerPoints and like doing the whole, well, what about this verse? What about this verse? What about this verse? And Stuart, the other guy here, was at first doing an okay job of like redirecting the conversation to like having a back and forth on a specific point, but at this point has just fallen for the gish gallop and is like, every time it's like, well, what about this? He's like, well, theologically, and it's like going down a totally differing path. And again, all of those conversations could be interesting, but all of them at once is the most dull, boring thing to watch. So to be honest, this isn't the best debate I've watched. It's not terrible, but it's like, this is not that interesting because of that, because they both keep like meandering to like weird points instead of kind of staying on the interest at the beginning. And I had a suspicion this was going to be the case because there was a bit of kind of like this is always a good hint that you're in for a potentially bad debate. At the beginning, the introductory statements were a little too much detail. And to me, like, a really solid debater usually starts out with like one or two points that they really want to pinpoint and a broad arcing narrative that they're going to back with the argument that ensues. But when you have somebody starting and in their opening statement, they're like 5 billion things. And then they're like, all right, let's debate now. It's like, I don't know if this is going to be that interesting. Because again, like, who can address any of those things? I don't know, but let's continue. It's still fun. I'm still enjoying it. Are you guys enjoying it? I hope so. Also, I'm getting work done, so.
What it's talking about is you did have to be good enough at one point, but then all of a sudden I had to become human for you to understand that you actually can't reach it. No human being can. So I'm going to do it for you. And that's when you get the sacrificial language. And that's what Paul picks up in all of his epistles over and over again, talking about how boasting in the cross, talking about how it's not my own good works. I'm a Jew of the Jew. I'm a Gentile of the Gentile. I'm a Roman of the Roman. I am perfect in every way, but I consider all these things a wash, all these things excrement, apart from knowing the grace of Christ Jesus. So it's a brief response. A little longer than brief.
Okay. I hope this is the right one. No, this is it.
Oh no!
Well, you asked me to ask a question.
Oh no, Adam!
I thought that was your question. Are you not liking? I saw in your other debates like none of them got into scripture, so I figured maybe having you see the scripture and the context will help a light bulb go off in your head. I really want to deconvert you, honestly.
Well, what I'm so interested is. That's why we're having this debate.
Can I show you one more, and then you can kind of give your thoughts on kind of this whole like direction that I'm going with this.
All right.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. All right.
Are you evangelist? Let's hear it.
All right. So again, Paul references Isaiah 11:10 when he says the root of Jesse. That's connected to the rod. Can you agree that Jesus is the rod? He's the Messiah. That's what that means. The branch, the root, the rod, they're all the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Psalms 110, Hashem will stretch the rod of thy might out of Zion and rule in the midst of thine enemies. Who's Jesus ruling over but the Christians? Psalm 110, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. That's considered the nations that are now worshiping Jesus. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Later on verse 4, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. As you know, in Hebrews, Jesus is related all throughout as the Melchizedek. And the Melchizedek scroll, 100 BC, written in Hebrew, also kind of goes to show that this concept of this Pesher Jesus Messiah figure was going on before he was even born. And then it says, the Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. That's Gentile kings. And he shall judge among the heathen, the Gentiles. He shall fill places with dead bodies.
Yeah, I have to pause here. So again, like one of the reasons Hitchens was so compelling was he didn't do this. He didn't pull out like Hitchens could rattle off scripture like off the top of his head, and every once in a while he would. But I feel like this guy, I don't know how much experience. I don't know. I don't think it's effective. I don't think his approach is effective, which is shocking to me. But okay, it goes for a while. We'll see how much more we can do. If he keeps reading PowerPoint presentations, I might just bow out and we'll watch something else.
He shall wound the heads over many countries. And also there's this idea of treading the winepress all over. Paul even cites in 1 Corinthians, he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. We're talking about a Messiah that wants to conquer the world. This is what Jesus did, and this is the person that you're willingly following. That's how I see you that you've been deceived into following this guy that was meant to conquer you all along. And what happens to Christians in the end?
When Paul talks about how we've all sinned and fallen short the glory of God.
Oh no, another ad.
Everyone's got a dream.
And when he talks,
so Gaz was saying, so he's trying to turn him away from God using scripture, which he says is a myth. What point is he trying to make, that Jesus was evil or that he was not God? I don't actually think he's being really cogent in his point. And that's one of the things I'm like, again, like he should watch the guys he was saying he was influenced by, because it's like those guys make really compelling arguments. You are not doing a great case at that. And like, again, like he kind of started pretty strong in this, but now it just feels like floundering.
It's about how all of us have enmity. He uses the word enmity.
Now,
enemies.
In his defense, hold on. In his defense, this other dude, I need to pull this down. Did they just do something weird with it? Okay, I guess their live stream did something weird. But in his defense, in Adam, the debater's defense, Stewart, I think the other debater, is falling for every gish gallop there is. Like, it's like nobody's bringing the conversation back on the rails. So if you're letting somebody guide you anywhere they want in a debate and letting them just like, I don't know. I kind of can't blame Adam for this tactic, but it's just kind of boring is all I'm saying.
Root conjugation.
Because now we're getting into like
everyone has enmity with God. And so all of us are enemies. And that's what you're getting in Isaiah and other places where yet again, it's ambiguous with this word enemy, because when I'm in the Psalms right now, and enemy is used in so many different kinds of ways. But when Paul uses it, it is clear that every single people group is at enmity and enemies with God. And even if you are ultimately a Christian, believed in Christ and are saved, you still have a sinful human nature. And so you're still enemies with God in many different types of ways.
Okay, before Paul was born, in the context of the Old Testament scriptures, which come hundreds of years before, in their context, who were the enemies of God and the Messiah to come?
At that point, it was other nations.
The Gentiles, the nations.
And yet, how certain are you with how the Israelites are judged and killed just as frequently as the other nations by God when they go astray? How sure are you it's not the Israelites as well? Because God's doing a serious job on that.
The Israelites are spoken about different. He doesn't include them in the nations. The nations are referring to the non-Jewish world.
Yeah, but how do you make sense of that?
What do you have to say about
why is God judging the Israelites in many cases in a much more strict, ruthless way than the Gentiles?
Because they're his chosen people, and because it's a theme that he punishes them for not following the Torah, for going after foreign women or worshiping other idols.
So he's conquering his own people then.
Christians have been deceived to believe, because of this myth, that ancient Jews killed God, the charge of deicide. And Jews have been persecuted by Christians for thousands of years because of this. What do you have to say about that?
Sorry, my children are going to sleep. You're going to have to ask that one again.
The charge of deicide, that the Jews killed Jesus. What is your thoughts on that and all the persecution from that?
So the proper response to that is Jesus was Jewish. So, like, yeah, that's the easiest response to that. This is weird, man. Like, I used to be a really hardcore atheist. I know there are atheists that argue really effectively. This guy, I'm sorry, Adam. I don't think he's. But to be fair, okay, I got to give him credit. I don't know how seasoned he is at debate. Maybe he's an expert at something else. Maybe this is just something he agreed to do. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the next point is going to be like, if God, can make anything, could he make a boulder that he can't lift? Like, I feel like this is the level of engagement now that we're going to be seeing, which again, it's like, come on, dude, you can do better. I'm just saying. I don't know. I just want to make a point that, like, this isn't a great representation of the other side of the argument. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I believe it was.
Were they deceived?
It was the Sanhedrin.
Oh, Gazbot said, I still don't know what his win condition is. It's like he's aiming for mess. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's not rhetorically effective. Like the Stewart guy, who doesn't seem like, again, I don't know this Stewart guy. Maybe he's a heavy hitter. I don't know. I haven't really seen him debate before. I don't think he's like a John Lennox type. Like Lennox would be hard as hell to debate, but I don't think Stewart Nettle, maybe he is solid. But my point is he's making Stewart look pretty good just by the fact that he's been gish galloping so much. But Stewart,
absolutely, but it was more than just the Jews that killed Jesus. I'm pretty sure just about again, that goes back to scholarship. I don't want to argue from authority when it comes to the Bible or scholarship, but the majority of people I know, at least, it would say Jews as well as Gentiles. So
that's not what the church said throughout history.
Many. Okay,
that's not what the Gospels say. The Gospels make it pretty clear. What does the church mean?
Like, you're talking like the Catholic Church, or are you talking about Church Universal? Are you talking about fundamentalists?
I'm asking you, do you think
the church did not? It was not the church.
The church didn't blame the Jews for killing God.
Many fundamentalist churches did. Yes, agreed.
The Vatican didn't.
If you think it was
the church fathers didn't.
You think it was the whole church universal? That's a joke.
No, I don't think it was the whole church universal, actually, but it definitely was a lot of it throughout history. So do you not think that it's totally irrational and ridiculous to blame people for supposedly killing God? And without the fact that they did that, Gentiles wouldn't even be saved. So they're almost the heroes of the story that had to do God's divine plan by rejecting him and fulfilling the prophecies. Jesus knew they had to reject him.
Okay, sorry. I'm not getting the sense that like Stuart sorry, I'm just not even getting the sense that Stuart is like agreeing with the idea that the persecution of Jews was right. It seems like that's what Adam's kind of trying to put on Stuart, and I kind of feel bad because it's like there's a pretty easy rebuttal, which is Jesus Christ was a Jew. If you think the way, the truth, and the life is a Jewish man, then being anti-Semitic just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's my take on it. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
Christianity wasn't for them. They're the villains in Christianity. They're the villains, but they're also central and they're also chosen. Like Paul says, they are, according to the Gospels, they are the enemies for your sake, but they are chosen on account of the patriarchs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not a deception that throughout history Jews have been persecuted because Christians blaming them for not accepting their Messiah? And how ridiculous is it for Christians to even care about them rejecting a Messiah that was meant to conquer the nations all along? It's all absurd. It's all ridiculous.
Every single religion has blamed each other since the beginning of time. You could easily say that through the Crusades, the Christians were blaming the Muslims were blaming the Christians over and over again. So no, you get that through every single religion. And this whole term of Christ killers, I'm involved, so I'm a pastor as well. I don't hear Jews and Christ killers used in the same sentence very frequently at all.
Not anymore. No, not anymore.
No. So
no,
blame game.
But you do believe they're chosen by God. You believe that that this idea that the God of the universe would create all of the billions of galaxies and around for billions of years, because you're not a young Earth creationist, you said, and then he waited until just man evolved 100,000 years ago, but just 2,000 years ago he decides to start intervening and choosing one group of people out of all people. You believe, you affirm and corroborate that chosen status, and I think that's proof in itself that Christians have been deceived.
I don't think that's ethnocentric whatsoever. It goes back to the point I was making. God was just as tough, if not.
I'm sorry, this is a tough one to watch. It's just kind of boring. I have seen so many better debates. So many better debates. It's not bad. It's just okay. I'll be right back. I'm gonna put a trailer on for one of my books, and we're almost done with panel 4. And I might watch a little bit more of this debate, and then we're going to, Gaz was saying it's bad. I agree. I feel like you want to see a good engagement. Watch Dawkins versus Lennox. That's a good one. That's a classic. Yeah. Watch any debate with Christopher Hitchens, whether he's equally matched or not. It's great. Watch Matt Dillahunty. He's amazing. Like anyone he debates, it's interesting. I think Adam, I'm going to give this Adam Green guy a little bit of credit. Maybe it's one of his first debates. That's what I would guess. Yeah. Anyhow, I will be right back though. I'm going to put on a trailer, then we're going to finish this, and then we're going to do some world domination. Risk. Okay, here we go. Here's the trailer. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Chris and I like comics. I want to talk about this comic for a second here. I just got this in. I ordered it direct from my local comic shop through Diamond Distributing. It's Joshua Kemble's Jacob's Apartment. I really enjoyed this book. There's all kinds of comics out there, let's be honest. There's fun comics, there's superhero comics, there's young adult comics, there's adventure comics for kids. There's so many different things on the planet. But there's also an entire subgenre of alternative books. Real life, real world depictions in comic book form. Situations that happen to each and every one of us. And this is a fine example of that. If you get a chance, order this book from your local comic shop. You won't be disappointed. I can't sing its praises high enough. Okay? Check it out. Jacob's Apartment by Joshua Kemble.
All right. That was a very kind testimonial, you guys. A testification. Somebody testified for my comic. All right. Let's see if we can stomach any more of this, because I have to say it's kind of entertaining. It's kind of entertaining in how bad it is. And I think occasionally I'm going to pull up some stuff I watch on YouTube. Gaz said, that reminds me, I just noticed you have a blurb from Alex Robinson. Do you know him? I don't actually know Alex, but I will tell you this. He's been supportive of me since I started. Back when I did Numb, him and Shannon Wheeler, who made this guy, Too Much Coffee Man, they were the most supportive indie cartoonists who were willing to like give me quotes and stuff to help sell my books. Alex is really cool. So he's been really friendly to me. I think he's actually, I'm kind of shocked at how much he is not like a giant name in comics. I feel like Box Office Poison and Tricked are like some of the best graphic novels ever written when it comes to just character-based stories, especially Box Office Poison. And I was surprised that around the era that like Blankets blew up and Craig Thompson kind of became like this giant, which is understandable. I think Craig Thompson is a genius, but I always felt like it's weird that Alex didn't blow up to that level. And if you guys haven't read Box Office Poison, buy it. You won't regret it. It's great. Gaz said that's awesome. Yeah, it is awesome. And you'd be surprised, like some of the guys who are kind of up there that are willing to give cartoonists the time of day. It's just kind of a thing. Yeah, and then Gaz was saying, I feel like the late 90s up to the 2000s, he was going there, and then it just didn't go there. And I don't know why. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, he was up for like Eisner's and Harvey's and all the, like, he was going the path, and then something just, you know, again, not that, like, again, he's very successful. He's going to be in the history of comics, but I'm just surprised. I feel like it's kind of like how I felt about the Pixies before the Pixies kind of became in vogue again, where it's like, how did this band not become like this huge thing? You know, they were on the path. It's just weird. Okay. Let's watch a little more of this horrible debate. I thought it might be a little better than that. Okay. Gaz said nowadays it seems like he enjoys podcasting more. Well, you can't blame the guy. Like, comics suck. I mean, making comics is heartbreaking and very low reward endeavor.
Not tougher on the Israelites than any other nation. He chose a very small, struggling nation group, and the root of Jesse you talked about was Jesse's son David, who was an embarrassment to become king in terms of his stature. Mm-hmm. And God chooses that same type of nation to be a light to the world, in the sense of they're chosen for a time, but then they completely lost the type of what I believe how you're defining as chosenness. When Jesus comes, and then all are welcome. And the simple, what is the one Bible verse that everybody in America knows, hopefully still?
John 3:16.
For God so loved the whole world that he gave his one and only son. Mm-hmm. The entire world. It's definitely not just the Jews. And if people can walk away, honestly, from reading the New Testament and say, oh man, that was really unfair, how everybody but the Jews were treated very poorly in the Old Testament, and then the treated poorly in the new. And
no, that's what I'm saying. I think Judaism's treated is terrible for them, just like all the Abrahamic faiths have been terrible for humanity. Here's a point.
I think that's totally wrong.
I think we could agree that Jesus, you probably believe that the story of Joseph, right, in Genesis, that he was rejected and sold by his 12 brothers, sold by his brother Judah, which what represents Judas or the people of Judah. And then he goes and rises up to rule behind the throne in Egypt. That is the archetype for the Jesus myth, to be rejected by his brothers, rejected by his people, sold by Judas, and reign over the empire of the Gentiles, which was Egypt at the time. That is the archetype for the theme that they went with this Jesus myth.
So I always start with the reliability of the Gospels and historical.
That's your problem. That's your problem.
And I move to...
You need to start skeptical. Otherwise, you have a preconceived... you already have your conclusion. If you're going to start with it, it's right.
Everybody says I'm one step away from atheism. I'm pretty sure I'm starting skeptical, right? So the whole idea,
I think you're trapped. I don't think you could get out even if you didn't believe it. I think a lot of people are like that.
What in the world did you just allude to that came to your deconversion? Was it this garbage? Tell me it was something more stimulating and more, let's just say, intense in your head and your heart that really led you away from the faith. And was it this argument?
What argument?
What you're making tonight.
That it was a deception to theologically conquer the nations? No, I didn't realize that until much deeper research into origins of Christianity and all of these verses.
So why don't you try and convert me then in the same way that the other atheists converted you?
Well, you go to college campuses all around the country. I'm sure you've heard all of the so-called Reddit tier arguments. But what deconverted me was, I never really believed, even as a young kid being raised in the church, the dipping in the water and the baptism, the drinking the blood. It just felt also like a cult initiation rituals and practices. Dying for my sins when I wasn't even born, and it's not even the dying for the sins, it's the believing in the dying for the sins. Why would God not just forgive sins? Why does he have to do this Yom Kippur scapegoat sacrifice so we're washed in the blood so we could be, it's all nonsense.
So it was the theological central message of going back to Paul's 1 Corinthians 15, 3-8. That was what got you. It was not historicity. It was none of that.
No. I believed in a minimal Jesus history. I thought he was possibly an ancient Jew who was a reformer from Judaism, and just they exaggerated stories about him afterwards. That's what I used to think until I read and studied Carrier's work in mythicism, which I think I'd suggest that you do the same. This is called modern day debates, but debating this issue almost feels like olden day debates or ancient debates, because I can't believe that we're still arguing about these.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I feel bad for this Adam guy, because like he keeps referencing one book that he's read that kind of like convinced him that like Jesus wasn't a historical figure. And that's an outlying position. And again, you can take it, but just understand like that's a tough position to hold. Like regardless, like you don't have to believe he was the Son of God or anything like that. It's just a hard position to hold. And so he's in this rough spot where he's having to defend an outlier position where he's read, from what it sounds like, one book. And he keeps telling his opponent during a debate, you need to read this one book because that will change your mind. And again, his opponent has brought up like at minimum 17 different historical references, kind of citing, including the most like prominent biblical scholars that are both atheistic and Christian alive. And he's bringing up one obscure book that this guy hasn't read and then being kind of snarky about it. Like, oh, well, this modern day debate. Like, anyhow, my point is, I feel kind of bad for Adam, because I think if you put like a Matt Dillahunty in this debate, I think that the Stewart guy gets crushed. But I don't think Adam's holding up well. And honestly, Stewart hasn't held up that well either, because he's not like redirecting the point to like the core tenets that they started with, which to be fair is a little difficult because Adam's even starting statement was like this wild web of like a million points without a point.
These things in the 2023 of the year of our Lord.
When you say these things, what do you mean?
Walking, talking snakes, walking on water, blood magic.
I can't believe we're still arguing atheism, seeing that atheism is literally going to be
not arguing atheism,
microscopic.
Actually.
Yeah, but you're an atheist and you're making this all sound.
I'm an agnostic.
Why in the world does like 93% of the world and growing still believe in some type of God if this is so obvious and we're becoming more technological?
Because we're scared of dying.
More scientific. Okay, so it's just we're all just scared, and so we just start believing in a God. Is that what you're saying? The world is scared. So the scared.
I'd agree that human consciousness is inclined to think about the supernatural. I can agree to that. Like I said, I'm not a hardcore militant atheist. I'm agnostic. But what I will tell you is I don't believe an exclusive group of chosen people are the only ones that can speak for God. Like Paul says, they're entrusted with the oracles of God. And I don't believe anybody speaking for God. If God wanted to speak and let his message known, he could do it clearly. He knows what it would take to make everybody believe. If he really existed, he wouldn't be testing our faith in hiding from us and making everything look like he's not real. And this is all just ancient myths.
So he would coerce us?
I didn't say coerce. How about not hide and make it look like he's not real?
What do you want?
Want a job that I don't hate.
Okay, guys.
Want to do something that matters. But I don't know what that thing.
Let's go back.
This is the same kind of thing you were talking about, and why
we have to rely on ancient scriptures that we don't even have the originals for, that were probably copied and changed and translated.
All right, now you're just okay. One at a time. Let's take one of your topics at a time. Let's just not just try and throw the whole toolbox here, every tool at Christianity all of a sudden.
Okay.
You talked about his hiddenness. So why would you disagree with the Blaise Pascal, who said that it is perfect evidence for those who have open hearts, the top mathematician ever to have existed, at least in my opinion? Why wouldn't that at least make a little bit of sense? Because he said too much evidence. If God.
Okay, here's the thing that I'm going to say that's kind of a knock against Stuart too. So Stuart's bringing up Pascal's wager. Come on. That's a tough argument to hold. It's been so easily debunked by so many people. But here's the thing. Adam does not seem very competent. I don't think he even knows how to counter Pascal's wager. Maybe he does. We'll see.
God just comes to you as Zeus and this big with thunderbolts and this big powerful. I'm talking about fear. This big powerful God who says, "I'm going to smite you if you don't believe in me," and he shows up physically. You're going to believe because of fear.
Like Christians do. They believe there's a fear of hell.
That's exactly my point. My point is God doesn't come to you in that kind of way as Zeus. The Christian God is the exact opposite from Zeus.
He's worse. He's genocidal. He's a monster.
In terms of he is hidden, yet gives us evidence.
You have free choice to believe, otherwise you're going to burn in hell.
He wants to grow in a trusting relationship with us. If he becomes actually human and dies for us, I'm pretty sure, what other way can you say that a God really loves you than if he dies for you? That's the best way I know of.
Real indebted. I'm not impressed.
If you have a loved one or friend who dies for you, that's when you know.
He made me in a way where he had to die for me.
Loves you. It's the best way to know that somebody or something loves you.
He made us in a way where he has to die. He's fulfilling the rules that he created. He's sacrificing himself to fulfill his own rules because he created Adam and Eve to fall, and he set the trap with the tree and the serpent in the garden, knowing that we would fall and knowing that we would need to be saved. And this is so degrading to think that we're born evil, we're born damned, we're commanded to be well. You just have to believe in the blood magic atonement sacrifice and the prophecies, otherwise you're going to burn in hell forever. The fact that we're even having this debate is proof in itself that there is no God, because if God really existed and he wanted to get his message clear, it wouldn't be debating in fights over these things. There wouldn't be thousands of different denominations that are incompatible.
All right, guys, I'm bored with this debate. Let's play some. It was kind of fun. So that was Modern Day Debate. I encourage you guys to subscribe to it. It's not always that bad. It's usually actually pretty entertaining. People usually will hold their ground a little better. I'm guessing that this is not their A-list debate team going on, but that was fun. So we're going to close this out. But if you guys want to watch the rest, you can check it. It's called "Is Christianity a Deception?" with Stuart Knechtel versus Adam Green. And what I'm going to do now is actually we're going to play some world domination, because check this out. And this is kind of a weird, awesome thing. I have to kind of rearrange my stuff here. So I have finished parts of page 69. That's right. So I told myself if I finished shading panels 3 and 4 of this, then basically I will allow myself a game of Risk. So I'm going to play a game of Risk, and then I'm going to try to finish up this page. Gaz just said nice. Yes, that's right. And I will say, if you guys enjoyed the kind of commentary thing, let me know. I'll do a little more of that, because I do listen to a lot of stuff. It's not always theological debates. I do really enjoy listening to debates in general. So that might be part of it. But if you guys kind of enjoyed that like commentary, listen along thing, let me know, and maybe I'll do a little more of that. For now, I'm going to put on a trailer, and then we're going to get our Risk cam pulled up. Make sure I have that actually going. Yeah, so for now, let's get all set up so we can rock some Risk. Let's see here, banners. I'll get my little scrolling banner going. And then we will go back to our full camera, and when I get back, we'll rock some Risk. So, and then Gaz said, enjoy and have a good night. Nice. So we're going to play Risk live. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the trailer. I'll be back, and we're going to rock some Risk. And then after Risk, I'm going to try to finish this page like a madman, because no rest for the wicked, guys. No rest. All right, here we go. Here's a trailer for Jacob's Apartment.
Speak clearly, it seems that only in dreams can we be these things we've seen and walk around breathing I don't know the part to play in this heart of mine. There's dissonant things, they split at the seams.
And I like Frank's comment here. He said, if you haven't played Settlers of Catan, you have no business playing Risk. Your choice of only Risk is invalid. I agree. Settlers of Catan is a great game. I don't know if they have an app for that. Okay. we're back on my goal to become a grandmaster at Risk. So that's what we're going to do. And hopefully some loser player doesn't just suicide me like the last game. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put on our Risk cam. And we're going to pick a game. I will walk you through my process. And then when I'm done playing this game, I'm going to try to see if I have the energy to either I will go to sleep and rock tomorrow, or I will do more comics, depending on how much energy I have left. Okay. We're going to join a game. We're looking for Classic Fixed. Balance Blitz, that looks like a good option. Unless there's bots already in there. There aren't. All right. We got a starting point. All right, here we go. Fun times. I love Risk. I'm aiming to try to be a grandmaster. And right now I'm currently a master. Not having the best of luck with the last few games. Or the best of strategy. If you guys know, a lot of people would be really excited to have a strong chance in Australia. I'm not. Everybody vies for Australia at the beginning of this game. And now I'm set up to be in contention with Pink, who's probably going to go for Australia. The question is, does Purple also go for Australia? I'm in a crap position unless I can take Australia. I'm also in 5th position, so that means a lot of my troops are going to be eaten toward the end. Okay. See where people are moving. Red is making moves that imply that Red wants to move their 5. I would think if I'm Red, you want to start working your way through North America. Frank said, how much do you get when somebody orders Jacob's Apartment or 2 Stories from Amazon? I got a good chunk of the sales. 2 Stories I get a bigger percentage of because it's a smaller publisher. And I got a smaller, actually, honestly, with 2 Stories, I didn't get an advance. Whereas with Jacob's Apartment, I got an advance. I get smaller amount of royalties, but better distribution. So hopefully that answers your question. But I get a good chunk when it's ordered. So if you do the math on it, generally with books, about 50% of the cost is going to go to the retailer and the distributor, and then about 50%, I'm just talking roughly, is going to go to the publisher. And from that, there's a percentage that I get. Frank said, I have Jacob's Apartment in my cart. I held off until I went over my budget. I was just curious if you get a decent cut. I do. So interesting. So Pink didn't make the Australia play, which is good. That puts me in an okay position. What does Purple do, though, when they're 6th position? Orange is making a play for Europe, and White just basically said, nope, I'm staking that claim. I don't know what White is thinking. They don't have a really good place in Europe. I'm not black. I just realized that. I thought I was black. This is good. I'm in a better position than I thought. Whew. Okay, I guess I'm purple. I have to rethink my strategy here. I think I commit to a no continent game. Although I can go for, I have a pretty strong presence in South America. Maybe I go for that. Yeah, I need to go for South America. That's like the only play to do right now. I think what I'll do is do a slow take. So I'm gonna I can start edging my other troops a little closer. And move my 3 to my 8. That's cool. I thought I was black for a second there. That's a mistake I make all the time. Frank said I'm not black either. I'm Latino. So red seems to be, I think, red wants to go to, I don't know what red's doing. I think red wants to go to North America. I think if I'm able, I think I might let red through. I think black is going to get aggressive with me because they can eat a lot of my troops at a very low cost. I'm a little concerned about white kind of doing a poor play and kind of, even though his 2 is pretty much lost, like buffing it up just because they're being kind of obstructionist in Europe. But I have no idea what game white is playing. It's really interesting. Is white trying to take... This is a confusing board. The strongest position right now is black, but black only has a 5 covering their Australia, which is really strange. Maybe white, maybe that's where white is angling to go. So I'm in pretty solid position starting to take South America. I'm not in the strongest position, so I can't really make that move yet. And red is wanting to move their 4 into North America, but they might also be wanting to take south because it's easier to hold. So now I have to do the math on that and think, if I let red move their 4, do they just act like a dick and move their 11 down, fortify their 4, and put me in a trap in South America? Or do they take the kindness and move into North America and take the continent that they could easily start closing out? I think I let red through. I'm not sure why orange is taking so long. I think orange is just confused about what to do because they have white kind of dominating their territory. What orange needed to do was make a decision, and instead they skipped a decision, and I think they didn't get a card. That was a very weird play by orange. Not sure what pink is doing. Now, if white moves into Africa, that's a weird play too, because you have 2 6s in Africa. Like, that's pretty solidly held by pink. Kind of weird move by black. Novice move by black. They just close themselves off from an attack. I've made that move before, though. It's an easy move to make. I'm going to let red through. And if I regret this later, then I regret this later. If red is at all a decent player, they're going to take that for what it is, and they're going to move through. If they're a shitty player, they're going to move their 11 down. They're a shitty player. It's so bizarre because if they had moved 1 notch up, they could actually have been in really solid position to take North America. And now they're going to leave North America being contested where they already have a presence and fight for South America because it's easier to hold. It's just not a smart move. So now I have to figure out, I have everything in place to do South America. I have my exterior troop in Asia. I don't have a card cash in. That's a shame. Do I hang out in South America letting red move into north? Or do I let them have south? Do they want south? I think I kind of have to hold the line a little bit in south. They have no cards to cash in. If they hit me, they're going to consolidate their reds first. I think I kind of just have to chill in South America and hope that they move out. It's a little tense. Pink is just collecting cards. Pink is waiting till they can cash in their cards to secure. White is a very strange player. Maybe they take me out? I don't know what White's objective is here. What territory is White aiming for? Are they going to play a no-continent game? Are they going to take out Australia? Very strange player. Kind of dangerous player, actually. I'm in a weird position because I can't cash my cards and I'm the weakest player on the board. So I'm going to look pretty tasty to the people around me pretty soon. I think I lose my exterior force probably next turn. But I have to, I'm kind of in a position where I sort of have to hold the line here. Like I'm just kind of forced to. And I still can't cash my cards. So we might be looking at a no continent game. I just don't know where the exit is. Red complies, thank God. I was worried Red was going to play like a suicide game. Now they're going to fortify those two big stacks to be nice and dangerous so I can't secure my territory. Or they're going to take all of the US, which would be a really smart move. They're moving pretty slow. It's a little strange. I don't like that big chunk of troops is right on my border, though. That's not a good start. But it's better than what I could hope for. So Pink is in really bad position. I think I was falsely saying I'm the weakest player on the board. Actually, Pink is in the worst straits of all of us. I hope Pink has a good cash in and is able to secure Africa. So I don't know what Orange is doing either. Orange is going to close out Europe. Actually, not a bad move. That moving their 3 was a bad move. But overall, closing out Europe wasn't a bad call. I think I'm going to do a trust move with Red. The way they've been playing, I don't know how good they are, though. But I kind of want to do a trust move with Red. So I think I do the non-defended defense, where I leave 1s on each side. And I'm really hoping White does not eat my 6. Pretty scary territory if you're black. Pretty much have White holding a gun in your face right now. That's what I kind of view in Risk. Like if you put your giant stack of troops that close to another player, it's equivalent to kind of like the game's version of like holding a gun in someone's face. Okay. I'm going to be a big target after this. So I kind of think my best bet is going to be to move my 19 here. We'll consolidate the territory when we have a card cash in. Puts red in a tough position. Who do you want to hit, red? You want to start beef with me? You're better off starting beef with orange. If you want to break someone. Let's see how they behave with orange. Do they want a friendly neighbor? They're putting themselves in position to take out my exterior troop too. But they're also in a position where they're very vulnerable. It'd be weird for them to take out the exterior troop because then that gives me incentive to go to war with them. But again, maybe they're not that good of a player. Orange gets a good, healthy, hefty 8 troops. 10 troop card caching. Orange is looking solid. They should fortify that 11, though. Not sure what they're doing now. Orange is not playing well. They're going to get owned. Sorry, Orange. Orange is playing a bit like a bot. That's a strange move. I'm kind of surprised pink doesn't break orange right there. Because what's orange going to do if you break them? Does white just suicide in? They want Australia? Or they take out my exterior 6? I don't like all these people messing with my exterior 6 here. I think I stand a slight chance that red doesn't break me if I put a 1 at their border. And I'm going to take that risk because if red and I can't get along, I might be better off leaving and migrating to a different spot in some way. If red and I can get along, red can start dominating the game. It's interesting that pink has put themselves in a position where they are completely antagonistic to red. They put 11 troops right where their 10 is, trying to like escalate a war, which is great. I like tension at that border. If we can relieve some tension at this end of red's border, they can allocate more troops to that end, and then we can have more conflict with orange and red. But if I make that 1 and then red just does a breaking game forever, they'll distract themselves to the point where black can kind of sneak up and kill them. Black might also not be an unseasoned player, so they might think it's a great idea to take out my exterior troop. Instead, black just started war with orange, which makes me a happy person. Okay. Gonna go ahead and do this. I'm gonna take that and I'm doing a trust buddies move. All right, red, don't screw me. There's about a 90% likelihood red screws me. If red doesn't, we might have a little bit of a start here. Cool. We might cohabitate here, red. What about orange? Can orange stand me having territory? Can pink? I like this move, though, because I get to know who my enemies are. Good move, orange. But orange is like really depleting their power. It's very strange. It's hard to win this game if you keep threes on your border. Like pink can just break three like nothing, and you have no way of retaliating. If I'm pink, I think I would break Europe. Maybe pink breaks me. That would not make any sense, but if I'm pink, I'm breaking Europe right now. Although maybe letting Europe kind of survive a bit is good because it like keeps pressure on red. I don't know what white is doing. That might not be a bad move if they don't want to do a no continent game. To maybe white decides to take Europe. It's a good spot. That 3. That 3 is a really good spot. So I kind of have to keep my exterior position somewhat strong. I don't need it to be super strong. I don't want it to be threatening. There's always a chance that someone takes out my exterior position. Okay, guys. I'm going to play a trailer really quick, and I'll be back with the rest of this game.
Hi, my name is Phil Chandler. I'm a freelance artist, illustrator, and cartoonist. Today, though, however, I want to tell you about a graphic novel I picked up recently called Jacob's Apartment. This book was both written and beautifully illustrated by Joshua Kemble. It is a story of a doomed romance that causes the main character to question his beliefs and his faith, while he's also going through other tragedies in his life. Every page has been illustrated by hand and digitally colored with painstaking detail. It is an emotional story that causes you to think and even question things in your own life. And while the story is a tragedy, it is one that I was completely entertained by and I highly recommend. You can currently find this on Amazon or even check in with your local bookstore and see if you can order it. And while you're at it, you can also check out my Instagram at Phil Chandler Arts and also my YouTube channel by the same name, Phil Chandler Arts. And go buy Jacob's Apartment.
So I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about orange because they're kind of behaving like a bot. But they're not fortifying their territory, so it's making a very unstable position, particularly for my purple, which it seems like white is moving to a point where they can take out my very good play. Take out my exterior troop. Once my exterior troop is gone, I'm kind of in a position where I either have to attack my neighbors, which I have pretty sealed off to me. Good move by black. Just start chipping away at orange. Like, why let orange just kind of hang out there? That was weird. They're going to break my territory now. Definitely a suicide player here. Maybe they don't break my territory. Maybe they just continue to gobble up. They seem like a suicider. Good play. They're just going to hang out there? I think they're after orange because orange just put themselves in such a vulnerable position. How could you not take advantage of it? Well played, black. Very well played. I am so very cool with black right now. I think I might make this like a 10. And I might kind of move to here to allow red to have a card-eating territory. But I'm not trying to be at your border, red. Don't worry. If red's inexperienced, maybe they break my territory. I'm at 57 troops. Red is easily the table lead at 72. Red, if they're smart, hits orange. But it looks like they're considering hitting me when I'm in a position to retaliate. I don't like them growing troops on my end of the border. You want to think of it like almost like stockpiling weapons. If they take out my exterior position, it's like they're asking for me to hit them. But it seems like they know the game well enough. We're in a bit of a tough position here too, because no one is in place to challenge red. So this is what I was worried about with orange. Orange is kind of behaving like a bot, just eating whatever cards are nearest to them. Do they just pointlessly break territory? On the plus side, orange isn't an enemy that's too bad to get into it with. So even if they take out my exterior position, I kind of don't mind fighting orange. Orange is like very aggressive. I'm curious how many players let that aggression stand. Does red really let orange hold that much territory? Should I find out? Or does white take out my exterior position? They block my exterior position. Oh, thank God. White seems like they're prepping to attack. Black is in a good position to take out, maybe eat that 5 that's trying to card block them. I don't know if they do. They go for the 1. Okay. They've blocked themselves in, though, which is a rough position to be in. So I think I add 1 here. And we're just going to continue to do the exterior position. I don't think I break orange. I want someone else to break orange. Should I block orange so that orange can't break me? I wanted to close off the option for red going through me to hit orange. I want orange hitting that 11 stack. Because orange can't let that stand. They have 2 territories. They're going to accrue too many cards. Maybe they do a weird move and go through my exterior troops. I don't know. I'm surprised red is going to let that stand. Red is going to let that stand. Orange gets 13 cards. Here's my hope. Orange. Add those 13 to your 11. Oh, they're at my border. That sucks. Are you going to take my exterior troop? You douchebag? Oh no, you're weakening your border and you're opening up black? Like, why? Now black can break through you. That's flipping insanity, man. We can be cool, Orange. I'm not planning on attacking you. You play really unpredictably. You play very unpredictably. Maybe I move back. I want red and orange to attack each other. I don't want to stand in the way of that. Where am I at for cards? This is a tough one, guys. Does black let that stand? They're going to collect 13 troops per... Yeah, they're not going to let that stand. They can't. Gotta say, well played on red. That showed a lot of intelligence, like holding back on that. I think it's... I'm just kind of counting time till my border's broken or till somebody kills my exterior position. And in the case of that, I want to be in a place where I can really hit orange. Now, hopefully orange is a good enough player to where they realize if they kill that exterior position, the first person I'm going to eat is them. Red is getting very powerful. Red has 95 troops right now. So it's me and red, the end game here. I kind of feel like you got to let orange get strong. If I'm orange, I would fortify. Like, you're not getting a lot from Africa. Fortify. Like, move your 17 up, man. Take back your country. Like, stubbornly holding to like 2 dead territories is a really weird move. But also orange is intentionally trying to card block. Which is a very strange thing to do. I'm kind of a fan of white right now. Oh, never mind. I thought white was hooking me up with a card. I don't want to hit that 17. But I want that 17 and that 22 kind of hitting each other. Good on you, black. Keep eating away at him. Just take all the orange cards. All of them. Eat them all. So to get a card, I think I have to eat a 2. So I'm at 78 troops. Red is definitely solidly in first. They're already at 101. I'm in no position to break red. We have a lot of players who are in position to break red. Nobody's breaking red. Orange is not far from closing both of those territories. I don't think they can hold them. Orange also doesn't seem to want to hit anything black puts down, which is very strange. Like, why don't you want Europe? It doesn't make sense. Why are you closing Africa? It's the weakest continent of all your stuff. They killed my exterior position. Orange wants me to go to war with them? Okay, Orange. Orange is at 69 troops. I'm now at 69 troops. That move forces me to be aggressive or to just sit tight. I'm also surprised that black is just letting orange kind of walk all over and accrue that much territory. That's a little strange. But black is kind of forcing the conversation in England or Europe. Okay, guys. Question. Is it worth a 25 stack? Nope. I'm not moving. So I think I have to like sit here and fortify. Red might get very irritated and see an opportunity to hit me because I'm hesitating to hit a 25. If I hit that 25, red comes in and cleans up orange. Gets all those cards. I want to see some conflict here. Red is very powerful at this point. They have 108 troops. Orange will be catching up if they let orange just kind of walk all over. Yeah, they're getting 8 troops per turn just by having that presence in Africa. Or not Africa, Asia. That's insanity. You're going to let them accrue 8 troops per turn? And if I want to stop it, I have to hit a 25 stack. Like, red can stop it just by hitting an 11 stack, going in and doing cleanup. They have a nice 56 up there. White's a free agent, so they're kind of hoping we all go to war. Orange thinks I'm the enemy, even though they're getting eaten by black. It's a weird game. I have no intention to break your territory, and you just put me in a non-card collecting position. Not a fan of orange right now. I'm just shocked they're letting it stand. Like, how are you guys letting this weak-ass player hold so much of the board? At this point, they have like, what, like 70% of the board? And you guys are just letting it happen. Because you expect my 71 to just blast through orange. But what's my incentive to have that 71 blast through orange? Maybe, instead, maybe I let that 31 go to red. Why does orange fortify so hard against me when they're getting blasted by black? But then again, they have to understand that like black thinks they're damaging them, but they're leaving all these valuable cards that orange is just going to collect 8 troops per turn. If you don't break like a crap load of those cards like right above your head, you almost don't even have to worry about England. You need to worry about all the other troops. Okay, let's try a little create some hostility move. Are you guys ready? Let's see if this works. Orange meet red, red meet orange. So red right now is doing like a Python game. Have you ever seen a Python before it eats someone? Orange is a very smart player. It's funny, they were playing so chaotically, but I mean, how can you argue with the results? They have so much territory at this point. Yep, of course they break me. But you didn't take the hint. Orange really wants me to hit them. Like, I almost wonder if they're a bot for another player. It just doesn't make any sense. So that call of putting my 76 on my border was not off. So, like, why isn't red breaking orange? BC Boy said hi. How's it going? We're playing a round of Risk with some lunatics. Well done, Black. But you're making the wrong choices, man. You need to... I love that Black is doing that. But they need to clean out, like, all that presence in Africa. Like, it's good to break their territories, but clean out Africa, man. I think I just wait. Does Orange want to just suicide me? Or are they tempted? Are they tempted by red? I feel like orange and red are collaborating or something. The fact that red hasn't just completely annihilated orange just does not make sense. Like, does that make sense to you guys? Red can gobble orange up entirely and then take the board. Red will win this game. They're at 134. I'm kind of amazed that I haven't collected a card, and yet my troop count is better than orange's right now. I'm really not a fan of orange right now. It's funny how much patience it takes to just not break them. Because the second I break them, either white or or red just eats me like a snack. So the question is, how long till orange gets bored and suicides? Also, what is white doing but delaying? So orange's movements to me make absolutely no sense. So now orange is forced to choose between suiciding me or hitting a 15, and I think orange just stays in place there for no flipping reason. And I'm starting to suspect, I know this is crazy, I think orange might be an alt of black. Or of red. It's hard to tell. Red has been really hesitant to hit anything of oranges. CTX. Where's the orange at for troops? So orange is just going to let black have... That's not suspicious at all. Should I just hit the 30 stack? There's kind of like a 20 stack protecting me a little bit. At least that'll take orange out of the game. Let's do that. And now I'm in a good position because that 20 is actually protecting me. This is definitely not a game I'm going to win. It's interesting that red reacts like that to their loss of orange. I can't help but feel like there's got to be collaboration here. Maybe I'm crazy, but it seems like it. Happy to see that. They're lining up to eat orange. This might be endgame kind of moves. Red's got 145. Yeah, the math's not bad for red to make a move. Proactively start dominating the board. Don't know what white's doing there. It's an interesting game. It's interesting trying to hold your patience. Should I break red? No, because I need red to break black. Why did black just get in an offensive mode to me? Is black trying to force me to attack red? So next turn, I'm guessing black suicides me. Is this another? Is this that same guy from last game? Alphonse Bai. I think it's that same player who suicided me late in the game last time. Just going to screenshot that just in case. I'm kind of shocked nobody's making the move, the final move. Red's about there. Red has, let's see, 90, 80, 80, 16, 25. They're not in a bad spot to do something. Why wouldn't you? Why would they make that move and not break? Better question. Why isn't white just taking Australia? I guess they want to see black go nuts and suicide me. Really? Yep, it's that same player from last game. All right. Well, that's it. I got suicided by a moron. Okay, I think that's the same guy who suicided me last game, so it seems like I'm being targeted, which is kind of interesting. So I guess I'll have to report that. That'll do it. That was a boring game. How disappointing. All right, guys. I think I'm going to take a break for a second, and then I'm going to work on comics again. What a douchebag. All right, guys. Here is the trailer for Jacob's Apartment.
Clearly it seems that only in dreams can we be these things we've seen and walk around breathing I don't know the part to play in this heart.
Yeah, agreed. Thomas Adams were saying red and white were acting strange as well. Yeah, oh well. I still keep my master status, but I just have to watch out for those players because it seems like they were losers. So interesting. Third game where it feels like that kind of happened. Now it's time to rock and roll. Very strange. You'll notice this, I don't know. It's in general just kind of a weird thing, but whatever. Okay. 2 suicides same day. I think it was the same user, which is really odd. Okay. Let us get back to our comics. I'm working on that. Thomas said you're a marked man. Possibly. I just don't like the whole, like, again, I understand like suicides in that game. And I think there are times where you definitely should go all out and just kind of lose it. Like if somebody's been messing with you the entire game and then you kind of lose it and like suicide on them, that makes a little more sense. But that's one of the biggest downsides I think of Risk is like players who can't hold their own. They either use alt accounts or they like stupidly like suicide and like ruin the game for themselves as well as for whoever they suicided. And again, like that makes sense if it's somebody who's been like needling you the entire game because they're kind of asking for the game to be ruined. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of lame. Thomas Adams said you're a marked man. That's possible. It's interesting kind of watching that debate. I'm almost wondering if we should pull up something else. Let's see. Anything appropriate that I can pull up, listen to while we're working? That's the other question, is like, what can we pull up that's worth it? No, you know what? We're just going to work a little bit. I think I'll try to get a little further on this. It's getting close to like 1-ish in the morning, so I might call it a night after that. I have to say it is like weird when people aren't that good. Thomas said, some people want to win at all costs, but some of my best memories are when I failed spectacularly due to bad dice rolls and stuff. 100%. And your goal should be to win, but if you take away the challenge of it, I just, again, like, I don't know what the fun is for that player. Although I guarantee you, whoever that is, like whoever that player is that like suicided me, I don't think they'd be ranking really high. Strange move, though. All right. Haven't had the best risk run today. That kind of happens. You'll notice this in comics too. Like when you're working on stuff, every once in a while you're going to have days where you're just on a roll. Everything comes easy. And then you have days where like working on it is like, you know, a grind. And I think like half the trick to making a graphic novel is persistence and kind of continuing with that grind. Like to me, even the fun of this game is like I'm not an expert at it. And somehow I've managed just through persistence to kind of get a master rating on there. Although I probably lost a crap load of points because I'm guessing that was not, I think that was an alt account. I might be crazy, but there was something weird going there. And I don't say that every time I lose. I've lost a couple games recently and felt like it wasn't an alt account. So anyhow, my point being like half the fun of like the pursuit of like trying to become a grand master on this is like playing fair and square, seeing if I can navigate it and get better, and learn the strategies to succeed at it. To me, that's half the fun. I agree with Thomas. Like there's times, there's a game I came in second recently and I didn't fortify properly. That literally lost me the game. All right. But yeah, so we're gonna work our way through this panel, this crazy graphic novel. What are you guys working on? Thomas, what are you up to? Thomas said, better to build your skill on rock rather than stand like some people. I agree. And again, for all I know, maybe that's like a new player, but it's just a little strange how that went about. Thomas said, just relaxing. Finally got a chance to get to the computer today. Nice. I'm just kind of chilling, working on this. this panel. And then I think I'm going to call it a night if I can finish this panel without getting completely exhausted. Because then I can get back to it tomorrow morning and knock out the rest of this page, maybe even finish the color. If I can do that, I'm kind of on track. Page 69, that's right. So we have almost finished this. We'll have to get back on the horse and start from a much lower position again. I mean, I think I'll still be a master, but again, just from the gameplay of that, the fact that I suspect a lot of those were alt accounts, I'm guessing I probably lost quite a bit on that last game. So we'll start over tomorrow, probably play a couple of games of Risk. We'll also proceed to color the rest of this page. I've been enjoying this whole sequence. Quite a bit. It's been fun. I need to finish coloring Elizabeth though, so maybe I won't finish this panel. I want to finish this panel, but I think like I could be pushing it a little too far. So honestly, I might just finish her hair and then call it a night so that I can be fresh in the morning, stream all day. Get this page finished. Rock and roll. I think I'll just finish this strand of hair. Okay, guys. That's where I'm going to leave this page because it's been a long day. I've done a lot of streams today. And then Thomas said, don't forget time changes tonight. I didn't remember that. That's craziness. All right, guys. Well, have a good night. Thanks for tuning into the stream. I hope that was interesting. Every once in a while, I'll probably watch a stream or comment on it occasionally during my streams because why not? So let me know if you guys enjoyed that, even though that debate in particular wasn't the best of all debates. And I hope you're enjoying the comics content, the Risk content, and hopefully I can provide a little more content for you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. And I hope you have a creative night or a creative morning. All right. Have a good one. Bye.